Ooh, I picked out some good ones for you today. Hey guys, welcome back. Today, I've picked out some Reddit stories for you guys with the most insane twists that there's no way you could predict. What I really love about this second channel is that I can pick out my favorite stories I've read out of the hundreds, probably thousands that I've read. Anyways, I'll stop yapping. Here are 3 hours of scary Reddit stories that have the best twists. The first story today is from r/scary stories from user Abusement Park 10. Someone kept sending me money via Zelle, and I finally figured out what it was for. I stared at the lowered brightness of my phone screen as the Wells Fargo app displayed the Face ID screen. Within seconds, it had scanned my face, and the bright white app screen filled up a lifeless room. I took a look at the screen and audibly sighed. Checking, -$12. Savings, $0. Credit card, $67,344. I threw the phone back down on the table and leaned back on my now crusting sofa. The neighbors had let me borrow their Wi-Fi ever since Xfinity had shut mine off, and the electric came shortly after. My stomach growled as one should when on a diet of peanut butter sandwiches. Some days, I had to pick the moldy pieces off the bread just to continue using it. I had gotten so used to the taste that I almost started to leave it in. Rent was due tomorrow, and I was already several months late. My landlord had already informed me that another miss would result in likely eviction, and I understood given the leeway he had already given me. Philadelphia was not a place I wanted to be living on the street in, but unless by some miracle of God strikes, that's where I'd be in a few short days. The nosedive my life had taken these past few years has left me in a pool of my own doing. I was fired from my job as a financial planner when I was consistently showing up late for work and important client meetings. This was largely because I spent that time in the casino, and without any windows inside that cavern of despair, I'd quickly lose track of time. The gambling addiction was ultimately what caused my wife to leave with our daughter. You would think that this would be a sign to stop gambling, to get my life together, to get help, but the tragedy of losing my wife and eventually my daughter only amplified it. The court ruled I had lost all visitation rights after the electricity was turned off, and after they had done a deep dive into my addictive and destructive behavior with the casino, I couldn't blame the court or my wife. But despite knowing this was no fault of my own, I still felt anger towards her and the justice system that willingly took my daughter out of my life. I got up and walked over to my mattress, covered by a makeshift blanket and a bathroom towel. The AC located above me had been dripping water onto the mattress for weeks, but with rent unpaid, my landlord wasn't in a rush to get it sorted. I laid down on the soggy sheets and stared at the pills on my nightstand longer than I should have. I've never been one to contemplate ending my own life, but the longer I stared, the easier that path became. I hadn't realized it, but I had stared at them until my eyes eventually shut from exhaustion. I woke up to the sound of drilling outside my apartment window. The place I lived, at least for another couple of days, was located in the northern part of Philadelphia, just north of Fishtown. It wasn't the best area, but given my loss of income and debts, I couldn't afford much else. To be honest, the sound of drilling was the most comforting, given other things that I've heard throughout the late night horrors of this area. I picked up my phone just in case Lily had called, but I knew she hadn't. My daughter, who was turning 16 this month, seemed to enjoy the lie her new stepdad had given here. A very wealthy man and my former coworker, I always thought my wife took more fondly of him than what was comfortable in our marriage. And I guess that theory had been proven correct. My daughter wanted nothing to do with me once she found out her entire college fund had been donated to the blackjack table, and I couldn't blame her. Although no text or phone notification lit up my screen, a notification from Wells Fargo was summarized under the Apple Intelligence. $1,000 Zelle received, deposited into checking. I thought I had misread. I clicked into the notification so it expanded and read it slowly as if my eyes deceived me. $1,000 has been deposited into checking 7445 via Zelle. Received from 1-800-547-5555. My phone almost dropped from my hand as I opened the Wells Fargo app and eagerly awaited the Face ID to confirm it was me. Once it did, the numbers appeared on the screen. Checking $987. Savings, 0. Credit card, 0. I almost had wondered if I took more of those pills before I dozed off, and this was some sort of sick, twisted afterlife. Not only had there been a $1,000 deposit into my checking, but my credit card was completely paid off. No sign of any payment made in the app, no pending payment, nothing. This has to be a visual glitch, I said to myself as I clicked the little question mark support button in the bottom right. A chat window popped up. Within a couple minutes, a rep named Varuk had joined the chat. After a simple greeting and request to know what was happening, I typed out the following. I see in the app here that my credit card was completely paid off, but I don't remember making any payments towards it. I almost deleted this not to raise any red flags in case it was real, but decided to continue on. I also received a Zelle this morning of $1,000 that was unexpected. Can you check these two things for me? The bubbles popped up, indicating Varuk was typing. Sure, one moment please. The chat went silent for a few minutes. I felt my palms sweat as the bubbles reappeared roughly 6 minutes later. Then a message. Thanks for waiting, sir. After taking a look at your credit card account, it appears this card has never been used. We have no record of transactions or payments being made to and from this card. Did you just open it? In regards to the Zelle, we don't see anything on our end that shows an incoming Zelle to your account. We see your account balance is $987, but there's no recent incoming Zelle transaction on our side. I reread the message multiple times to make sure I didn't miss anything. I clicked the little send transcript to email after chat button, so I had this correspondence in writing. I had no idea how it happened, but I wasn't about to argue to return my outstanding debt. Yeah, must have been thinking of another credit card at another bank. My apologies. Thanks anyway. I disconnected the chat and then got the Gmail notification that the chat transcript was available for review. I clicked the email and made sure everything looked the way I remembered. Well, it didn't. But not because the wording or text or anything was different, but because there was nothing there at all. No chat log, no agent name, no me, just a blank white screen. I refreshed my email and clicked into it again, but the screen remained white. I went over to my laptop and tried loading it there, but the same thing happened. There was no evidence of this chat ever occurring. I sat there a bit puzzled as I closed the laptop and returned to the home screen of the app, almost expecting the money to be gone and the credit card debt replaced, but it said the same as it did when I checked it this morning. My rent was $800, so this gave me just enough to cover that and make a payment so the electric kicks back on. I pulled up my landlord's cell and sent him the $800 payment, leaving a memo with it. Here's what I have for now. I will continue to work to catch up on last month's and this month's. I then contacted PECO, submitted my card over the phone, and was told the power would return to my apartment in 4 to 6 hours. With the wiped out credit card debt, I got in my car and sped down the street to the grocery store, almost expecting my credit card balance to return by the time my tires screeched into the parking lot. It never did. I bought $300 worth of groceries and prayed that by the time I got home, the fridge would be back on, along with the rest of the lights. I pulled back into my parking lot and got out of the car, grabbing the handful of bags. I opened the metal door with my key card and headed up the stairwell. When I saw a figure approaching from the next flight up, it was my landlord. I knew it was a bad look to be carrying up 2 months' worth of groceries when I owed 2 months' worth of rent. But he didn't seem to mind. In fact, he shot me a smile. "Ah, Jonathan, thank you for getting the owed rent over to me. Did you hit the lottery or something?" I laughed back at him and shook my head. "Just paying what I can, Walter. I promise you, I'll have the next 2 months paid off here soon. I just wanted to send what I could afford." He cut me off with a look of confusion. I sensed there was something wrong with what I had just said, and his next sentence confirmed that. "The past 2 months? The Zelle I got from you was for $10,000, he said, shaking his head now with a brief laughter. "You left a note here saying, here's the last 2 months along with the next 10 paid in advance." He could tell by the look on my face that this was just as confusing for him as it was for me. I let out a small, uncomfortable laugh. "Okay, you got me. I hit a lottery ticket this morning and decided to pay it all off now before I blow it at the Bet Rivers Casino down the road." Walter had known about my gambling addiction. I was fully transparent with him when I became behind on rent and promised I would turn it around and catch up on payments. He used to have a gambling addiction too, which is why he cut me leeway over the past couple months of delayed payment. Congrats, but stay away from that shit, he said. Appreciate you being so financially responsible with the winnings. With that, he continued down the steps. I noticed he had a box of tools in his right hand. AC is fixed, and your power came back on while I was there, he yelled, before walking out the same metal door I had just come in. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued to receive $1,000 Zelle every single day. It was always at the same time, 8:55 a.m., and always that same amount. With the newfound cash, I was able to buy a new mattress, a new sofa, redo most of the apartment, and keep the fridge stocked. But, of course, a part of me wanted to know who this money was coming from. I asked a few friends, thinking it was their way of helping me out anonymously. Anonymously? But they looked at me like I had officially lost it. I don't know, maybe I had, but I didn't want to ask too many people and spread this insane story that some mystery person was casually sending me $1,000 a day. Today was my daughter's birthday, and I hadn't seen her since, well, the court said I couldn't. I knew she was having a huge Sweet 16 birthday party at Bowlerama, the bowling alley right down the street. She loved it there, and we'd skip school some days just to go bowling all day. I only knew of this party because she had been planning it for what seemed like years, but really it was just one of the last conversations I had with her before the gambling addiction took everything from me. With my newfound money, I knew getting her a gift and showing up to say hello was at the utmost of priorities. I don't know, maybe I had, but I didn't want to ask too many people and spread this insane story that some mystery person was casually sending me $1,000 a day. Today was my daughter's birthday, and I hadn't seen her since, well, the court said I couldn't. I knew she was having a huge Sweet 16 birthday party at Bowlerama, the bowling alley right down the street. She loved it there, and we'd skip school some days just to go bowling all day. I only knew of this party because she had been planning it for what seemed like years, but really it was just one of the last conversations I had with her before the gambling addiction took everything from me. With my newfound money, I knew getting her a gift and showing up to say hello was at the utmost of priorities. I didn't want to tip off her mother. I wanted it to be a surprise. I knew her party was later in the evening, so I actually headed down to the bowling alley early and bought her a brand new bowling ball, one she's been eyeing up since we started going there. Most bowling balls are between $100 and $200, but this one was $300 given its unique design. I bought a bag to go with it as well, put the bowling ball in, and couldn't help but smile as I went to the bowling alley bar for a couple of drinks. The bar was in the back of the venue, with a perfect view of the opposite side so I can see when my daughter and all her friends come walking in. After a couple of Michelob Ultras, I saw her. She looked just like her mother, who followed behind closely along with all her friends I came to know over the years. It's really hard to comprehend how fast kids grow up, but it's even more surreal when you go months without seeing them. I didn't want to jump the gun. I tilted the hat I was wearing over my eyes a bit in case they were heading my way, but it looks like they had reserved the 4 lanes closest to the entrance. This made sense, given the arcade, snack stand, and kitchen was close by. I ordered one last beer, sipped over the course of 10 minutes, and took what felt like a 5-year walk over to her bowling lane. In my right hand, I held the ball inside of its brand new bag. I couldn't help but smile. She was walking back to the table she was sitting at when she looked up at me for the first time in months. "Hey, kiddo." She didn't say anything. It didn't take long for her mother to come storming over. "What do you think you're doing here?" she asked, hushed in a whisper so the other kids didn't hear. Half of her party was goofing around their tables, but a couple of her friends began to look over. "It's her birthday, Emily. I just wanted to drop her off a little gift, that's all." Emily took one deep breath and peered back at the group of friends. "You have 2 minutes, she said. She walked over to the concession stand and grabbed a picture of kid-friendly Shirley Temples, delivering it to the table almost as a distraction. She was still as beautiful as I remember, and I couldn't help but admire her as she waltzed back from the concession stand back to the bowling alley. I wanted to ask her where Rick was, her newfound love, or old-found if my theory is correct, but I didn't see him anywhere. Lily still hadn't said a word to me. I lifted the bag up and handed it to her. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said. She scoffed. I felt my heart drop as she handed the bag back to me. "Unless this is every dollar of my college fund you used to gamble, keep your gifts," she said, crossing her arms. "Sweetie, I know, what I did was wrong. Why even show up here, Dad? We're finally moving on without you. Mom finally stopped crying every night, and you walk in here with what? A bag? A new bowling ball? Like it's gonna fix everything?" I'd opened my mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. I fought back ounces of tears that were forming in my eyes, and I could see Lily's doing the same. "I never want to see you again," she said. "That would be the greatest gift you can give me." At this point, her entire party watched as she walked back to the table, eyes filled with tears, and sat down. Her mother shot me a look of disgust, with a hint of sadness and empathy, but more so the former than the latter. I placed down the bag on top of the shoe rack we had been standing next to, turned towards the entrance, and made the short walk out. The entire ride home, all I could think about was the pile of pills waiting for me on the nightstand. I had pulled into my parking spot when I felt my phone buzz. Hoping it was Lily or even Emily, I quickly withdrew it from my pocket to see a familiar, yet now different notification. 15,000 Zelle received, deposited into checking. This was odd for a few reasons, besides the fact that this random person had been zelling me consistently for now 2 weeks. This was the first time it happened at a different time, 6:57 p.m. I had already received my Zelle this morning. Secondly, $15,000 is a lot more than the regular daily 1,000 I had been getting every morning. But lastly, and maybe the most interesting, was the memo that had been input with this Zelle message. It was an address. Okay, so that was part 1, and there's 2 more parts. I'm having a hard time predicting what I think is going to happen with this story. So far, we just have someone randomly sending this guy money every day, $1,000. He's an ex-gambling addict and lost his wife and daughter to his addiction, and they're giving him a bunch of money. So, I don't know. Let me know, in the comments down below, what you guys think is happening after part 1. Part 2, the address, 118 Canopy Lane, tonight at 2:30 a.m. EST. I've lived around Philadelphia since I was a kid, but Canopy Lane was nowhere I recognized. I typed the address into Apple Maps. A message popped up. "Did you mean 117 Canopy Lane?" I looked back down at the memo, certain I hadn't read it wrong. And I hadn't. 118 Canopy Lane. Tonight at 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I tried Google Maps next. I entered the address exactly as written and got the same result. I opened Google and searched it there, then switched over to the Earth view. 118 didn't exist. The street ended at 117, a row of houses pressed up beside the river. If there was a 118, it would have to be... I stopped myself. The numbers ran in order straight toward the water. The Schuylkill River cut long and winding through Pennsylvania, and around here it had always felt like a border, a dividing line between Philadelphia and New Jersey. Every year, all kinds of things turned up in that river, and human bodies were not exactly rare. I laughed under my breath and told myself I was being ridiculous. It had to be a typo. That was the only explanation. I'd go to 117 at exactly 2:30 a.m. and wait for whatever came next. $15,000. In the position I was in was life-changing money. I wasn't about to ignore the request and risk losing the endless cell payments that had been hitting my phone every day. If I ever wanted Lily to speak to me again, I needed every cent of the $200,000 I'd blown from her college tuition. Time dragged, but it moved. The address was about 12 minutes away, and nobody with any sense was driving around North Philadelphia at 2:30 in the morning, so I left around 2:10. I hadn't realized it at first, but the route took me closer to Center City, near that stretch of bars along the riverfront. I passed the casino on my left with about 2 minutes left in the drive and almost turned into the garage out of habit. Instead, I kept going until I reached Canopy Lane. I turned right onto a narrow street littered with potholes. 110 was immediately on my left. As I rolled forward, I watched the numbers climb. 111, 112, all row homes, all packed together on the dead-end block. Then I reached 117. It sat on the left side of the street, An old abandoned house, boarded up and rotting. The kind of place that practically announced, don't go in there before you even stepped out of the car. It looked like every house from every horror movie I'd ever laughed at. I used to make fun of people in those films, the idiots who walk straight into places like that. Then again, they usually weren't being paid $1,000 at first, and now $15,000 to do it. I stared through my windshield at the river. Moonlight shivered across the water in soft silver ripples. Across the way, the lights of Camden glowed through the dark. It was strangely peaceful. My dashboard clock clicked over to 2:30 a.m. I stepped out of the car and started toward the house, but halfway there I stopped. Something about this didn't sit right. The person sending me the money had been deliberate about everything so far. They had paid off my credit card. They had sent daily Zells. Somehow they kept it all nearly untraceable. So why make a typo now? Why not send one more dollar with a note that said, "My bad, typo, it's actually 117 Canopy Lane"? Better yet, they clearly had my number. That was how Zells were coming through, so why not just... I turned, just as headlights swept over the street. A car was creeping slowly toward me. It rolled down the block and stopped directly behind my car. The engine stayed running for a second, then the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. The moment her eyes found mine, I knew she was there for me, and she was. "Mr. Willman?" she asked. Her voice trembled. I opened my mouth, but first I tried to place her face. I couldn't. I was sure I'd never seen her before. Do I know you?" I asked. I glanced past her into the car, trying to make sure she was alone. She was. "I was told to meet you here at 2:30, she said. "Do you mind getting in my car?" I stared at her. Yes, actually, I would mind getting in your car, because I have no idea who you are, and I've been getting them too." The words came out sharp and fast, like broken glass. My skin prickled. "The Zells?" I asked. She nodded. "They paid me a great fortune to get you where you're going, sir, and I really can't afford to lose the money." There was something in her voice that hit me harder than it should have. Desperation, the kind I knew too well. I heard myself in it, the same cracked edge I'd had when I begged the judge for another chance, when I begged Emily not to leave, when I asked my landlord for one more month. For one humiliating second, I saw myself in her. I walked over, opened the passenger door, and climbed in. She waited until I was seated before getting behind the wheel. Then she handed me a blindfold. There was an apology in her eyes that she didn't say out loud. I nodded and tied it on. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't laugh at the idiots in horror movies anymore. I have no idea how long we drove. It felt like hours, but when the car finally stopped, I could tell it was still night. Even through the blindfold, I caught flashes now and then. A street light, distant city glow. If the sun had come up, I would have noticed. I felt her fingers loosen the knot. Then she pulled the blindfold away. A warehouse stood in front of us, tall and abandoned, with shattered windows and graffiti sprayed across the outer walls. I blinked at it. "You're kidding me, right?" She shook her head. "This is where they told me to take you." A chill ran through me. "They?" She went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good luck, Mr. Willman." I heard the doors unlock. I just nodded. Whatever they had told her, she clearly wasn't supposed to say more. She was my chauffeur, nothing else. I stepped out of the car. As I did, I saw a tear slip down her cheek. For some reason, maybe out of nerves, maybe out of guilt, I cleared my throat and said, "You never gave me your name." She swallowed hard, then managed a faint smile. "Riley." The moonlight caught in her green eyes, mixing with the tears. "Riley," I repeated. "Jonathan, it's been a pleasure." Then I shut the door and turned toward the warehouse. As I walked away, I heard her car pull off behind me. The headlights faded down a long dirt path that led to God knows where. I had no idea where I was. I stood still for a moment and looked around, but the warehouse was surrounded by dense woods in every direction. No traffic, no trains, no distant sirens, nothing. Wherever Riley had taken me, it was remote. I approached the building and almost gagged. The smell hit me all at once, foul and wrong. Something rotten underneath, something chemical. I couldn't place it, but it felt like the kind of smell a human being was never meant to breathe in too deeply. I stepped inside. The first floor was empty. Moonlight spilled through the broken windows, stretching across cracked concrete and scattered debris. There was no furniture, no movement, no one waiting for me. Then the light snapped on. The white flash hit so hard I threw a hand up over my eyes. By the time my vision adjusted, I heard something so familiar that for a second I thought I was imagining it. Slot machines, a casino floor. The sound wasn't coming from this level. It was above me. That was when I noticed the stairwell. Or maybe I noticed the arrow first, painted on the wall pointing up toward it. I let out a slow breath. As someone who loved horror movies, every instinct in me screamed not to go up there. But I also knew with complete certainty that if I turned around and left, the Zells would stop. No one had said that outright, but some things you just know. So I climbed. Step by step, the sound of slot machines grew louder. By the time I reached the top, I could see them. The entire room was lined with slot machines, all of them spinning on their own at random intervals. Every few minutes, one of them let out a blaring jackpot alarm that echoed through the warehouse. But the machines were not what caught my attention. In the middle of the room sat a blackjack table. There was a dealer standing behind it. In the moment I stepped into the room, his eyes locked onto me. "Hey," I shouted, "what the hell is this? Is this some kind of sick joke to you?" I stormed toward the table. He didn't flinch. He only motioned calmly to the chair across from him. "Mr. Willman, please have a seat. The other player will arrive shortly." I stared at him, anger turning quickly into confusion. Other player? What the hell is this? He didn't answer. At that point, I was done. I didn't care if it was a prank, some rich psychopath's game, or something even worse. I turned toward the stairs, ready to get out. Then he spoke again. "Your daughter's tuition money depends on this." I stopped cold. I turned back slowly. "What the hell did you just say?" At that exact moment, footsteps sounded from the stairwell behind me. I snapped my head toward the noise. At first, the figure was just a shape in the dim light. Then he stepped closer, and I saw a scratchy beard, the bloodshot eyes. My stomach dropped. "Walter?" My landlord approached the table, but he refused to look at me. His eyes were locked straight ahead, hollow and red, like he had looked at something no one was ever supposed to see. "Ah, player 2, the dealer said brightly. "Welcome. I believe you are the only two joining us tonight. Have a seat." Whatever this was, whatever kind of nightmare I had walked into, the comment about Lily's tuition was enough to keep me there. For now, I sat down. I glanced at Walter, but his bloodshot eyes never left the table. The dealer pulled out a deck of cards. "Each of you, place your right hand on the table, face down." I hesitated. Then, for no reason at all, Emily's words came back to me. "I never want to see you again. That would be the greatest gift you could give me." Reluctantly, Walter and I placed our hands flat against the table. What happened next took less than a second. A crate-like metal mechanism burst up from inside the blackjack table and clamped down over each of our hands, locking them in place. Rings of metal snapped tight around every finger with crushing force. I felt the pressure immediately, sharp enough to make the tips of my fingers go white. Side note, this is sounding a lot like a Resident Evil DLC. I'll put it up on the screen now. Anyways, let's continue. To my horror, Walter barely reacted. "Hey, what the hell is this?" I shouted. The dealer continued shuffling, humming softly to himself as he fed the cards into an automated shoe. "Hey," I snapped louder this time, "are you deaf? What is this?" "I'm not going to ask whether either of you has played blackjack before," he said, cutting me off. "We all know that's a silly question." He folded his hands neatly on the table. "Here's how this works. We are going to play until you either win 5 hands total or lose 5 hands total. As you know, the goal is to beat the dealer without going over 21. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to lunge across the table and rip his teeth out, but I was trapped, and he knew it. He kept going. "Every game you win sends another $5,000 to your Zell. Every game you lose, however," he paused and leaned back. "Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. The odds are not in the house's favor anyway, right? Surely you can win 5 out of 10 and collect your 25,000. He smiled as if this were amusing. It wasn't. If you lose 5 times, however, you are disqualified and receive none of the money. win 5, and you keep everything and go home. Okay, hold on. In the first sentence, if you lose 5 times, however, you are disqualified and receive none of the money. He doesn't say you get to go home. But in the next sentence, win 5 and you keep everything and go home. Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to go well for our character here. This had to be intentional. Walter and I were both recovering addicts. The cards, the casino sounds, the money. This wasn't random. It was personal. I looked down at the machine, crushing my hand, and tried to keep my voice steady. What are these things for? The rings were rigid and freezing cold against my skin. The dealer shrugged. Win, and you won't have to find out. Then he smirked. Oh, I almost forgot. He pulled the cards free and placed the deck in front of me. John, would you do the honor of cutting the deck? I stared down at the yellow card the dealer had tossed in front of me and let out a shaky breath. There was no reasoning with this man, if he even was a man, so I picked it up and slid it into the deck where he wanted it. At that point, for all I knew, the exact placement of that stupid yellow card could mean the difference between life and death. As sick as the whole situation was, I hated how familiar it felt to sit there and play blackjack again. Worse than that, some ugly part of me almost found it fun. It was the adrenaline, I think. This was no longer about money alone. The stakes had been dragged somewhere much darker. Every winning hand meant another $5,000. Every losing hand meant some punishment I still did not fully understand. And that uncertainty made my heart pound so hard I could feel it in my throat. I tried to force those thoughts out of my head as the dealer gave me my first hand. Great start, he said. I looked down. A king and an ace. Blackjack. Before I even realized I was doing it, I gave a tiny, silent nod to myself. A pathetic little victory gesture, and then the dealer spoke again. Blackjack means you get 2 wins, so you've now won 2 out of the 10 games. That's $10,000. A rush of adrenaline surged through me so fast it almost made me dizzy. The excitement died just as quickly when I looked over at Walter. He had a 5 against the dealer's 10. Walter hit and brought himself to 15. Then hit again and got to 19. He stood, apparently satisfied with it, or maybe just too terrified to do anything else. The dealer turned over his hidden card, a 5, then drew again and got a 10. Bust, 25. Walter was safe with 19. For the first time since he'd entered the room, I saw some flicker of emotion on Walter's face. It was barely anything, just a small nod, but it was there. The second round came, and somehow I got lucky again. 2 10s, 20. The dealer showed a 10 as well. Walter had a 9, hit and got to 19. I stood on 20. The dealer turned over another 10, 20 total. A push for me. Not a win, not a loss, just nothing. But Walter lost. The dealer turned his head toward him with a look of exaggerated pity. Better luck next time, friend. The metallic slice came first. Walter's scream came right after. It filled the room so violently that for a second it seemed louder than the slot machines themselves. I turned and immediately wished I hadn't. Blood sprayed from Walter's hand in sudden bursts, and I saw his severed pinky lying on the floor near the dealer's side of the table. The metal ring around that finger had collapsed with such force it had sheared the thing clean off and launched it across the room. My stomach twisted. I thought I was going to throw up. That's enough, I shouted. I'm not playing anymore. The dealer didn't react. He didn't even look at Walter as his screams bounced off the walls of the warehouse. That's a tie for you, Jonathan, so you only need 3 more wins before you're safe. Walter, on the other hand, you are now 1-1, and you need 4 more wins. Did you hear me? I yelled. It was eerie how little humanity there was in him. He simply reached for the next cards and started dealing again, slightly faster this time, like he was annoyed by the delay. I looked down. I had a 6. Walter had a 7. The dealer showed an ace. He checked for blackjack, then flipped the other card. Blackjack. I barely had time to process it. 2 metallic snaps rang out, back to back. Pain exploded through my hands so hard I nearly blacked out on the spot. I looked down just in time to see blood pouring from where my pinky and ring finger had been. Bone jutted from the stumps in jagged white slivers. My fingers had landed somewhere across the table. The scream that came out of me did not sound human. It came from somewhere deeper, some animal place buried deep under everything else. I could hear it echoing around the warehouse walls, thin and ragged and wild. My vision blurred as I turned toward Walter. He only had 2 fingers left. At some point, he had passed out from the pain, his head hanging at an unnatural angle. "Wake up, player 2, the dealer said. Walter didn't move. The dealer sighed, almost bored, then stood up and reached under the table. He pulled out a defibrillator like it was the most normal thing in the world to keep one down there. He stepped over to Walter, pressed a button, and a second later, Walter jolted violently in his chair. He woke up screaming. I love how much of an inconvenience this is to the dealer. He's like, this guy fell asleep. Oh my gosh, so annoying. Like, come on, let's get on with this. It was one of the worst sounds I have ever heard, higher and more broken than any pain I'd ever imagined a person could take. You guys are sick. I tried to say, but my voice was falling apart with me. The dealer glanced at me for a moment, almost as if he was deciding whether I needed the paddles too. Apparently, he decided I didn't. He sat back down and calmly began the next hand. I had 13. Walter had 7. The dealer had 8. My mouth barely worked anymore. The pain was so intense, it felt like I was underwater. Hit, I whimpered. The dealer mocked me by tapping the table with 2 fingers, showing me that if I couldn't speak, I could tap to signal a hit. So I tapped. He dealt me a 6. 19. Stay. He didn't even wait for me to finish. He already knew I was standing and turned to Walter. Walter wasn't responding. The dealer sighed again, this time with a little more irritation, then reached for what looked like a walkie-talkie. Through my fading vision, I watched him step a few feet away from the table and murmur something into it. I couldn't make out a single word. After a few seconds, he glanced back at us, said one last thing into the device, and returned. Contestants who cannot stay awake during the game are automatically eliminated. I had no idea what that meant. Then I found out. A small explosion erupted from inside the metal cage around Walter's hand. It blew his hand off in an instant. Blood sprayed across the table, across the cards, across the dealer's perfectly tucked white shirt, and across my face. Warm drops landed on my cheek and lips. And Walter didn't scream this time. He just toppled backward out of his chair, free at last, but obviously very dead. "Let me go," I somehow managed to yell. Even using my voice that hard nearly knocked me unconscious. My whole body felt weak and cold. Still, I couldn't quit. I couldn't. I thought of Emily, of the money I had already won, of what I still needed. 2 more wins. And strangely enough, I thought of Riley too. I barely knew her. We had shared maybe a few minutes of conversation, but something about her had stayed with me. I'd connected with her faster than I ever did with a stranger, and in that moment, half delirious and covered in blood, I knew one thing with complete certainty. I could not die in that room. I had to see her one more time. The dealer dealt the next hand. When he laid down an ace and a 10 in front of me, I nearly cried. Blackjack, another 2 wins. 5 total. The dealer smiled, though there was disappointment buried underneath it. "Great work, John," he said. "Your $25,000 will be zelled to you upon your return home." I never heard the rest. The darkness finally took me, and this time I let it. Rain. That was the first thing I heard when I woke up. Soft rain tapping against a car window. I could barely open my eyes. Everything felt heavy. It took a few seconds for my vision to clear, enough for me to recognize the skyline outside. The glowing skyscrapers of Philadelphia shining through the wet glass. "Ah, look at that," a woman's voice said, just in time. I turned my head. Riley sat behind the wheel, both hands on it, smiling over at me. The moment memory came rushing back, I jerked my gaze down to my hand. A cast was wrapped around the places where my 2 missing fingers had been. "Riley, what the hell?" "They called me to come pick you up," she said. "When the guy in the blood-drenched suit brought you out, you were already asleep. He just placed you in my car and told me to return you home." I pushed myself upright a little and looked through the windshield. We were driving toward my actual apartment, not back toward Canopy Lake. "You know where I live?" I do now, she said with a nod. They gave me your drop-off address. I sat there in stunned silence. A part of me was too scared to ask about the warehouse. Some stupid, desperate part of my brain still wanted to believe I'd imagined it all, but the cast around my hand made that impossible. Riley, I said, my voice low and shaky, something is wrong. I swallowed. Who are they? The moment I asked, her eyes widened. Then I followed her gaze. Her phone was mounted in one of those dashboard holders near the wheel. At the top of the screen, I saw a tiny red recording light, and next to it, the symbol for an active call. My stomach dropped. Whoever they were listening to us, and they had been recording the entire conversation. So there's one more part of the story that we're going to read, and I'm very curious of where they could go with it. Being that, he won the money, lost a couple fingers, all right. So yeah, here's the last part. Just a little warning, this part of the story discusses mental health topics that may be disturbing for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. If that does bother you, I'll see you in the next video. If not, let's go ahead and get started. When Riley dropped me off at my apartment, I used my good hand to pull my phone out of my pocket. After the look she'd given me in the car, the one that told me they were listening, neither of us had said much for the rest of the ride. I stood there, just inside my doorway, staring down at my lock screen. The $25,000 Zelle notification was sitting on my screen. It must have come through while I was passed out in Riley's car, because I hadn't looked at my phone until that moment. But strangely enough, it wasn't the Wells Fargo notification that caught my attention. It was the missed call from Lily. My heart jumped into my throat. I tapped her number as fast as I could and held the phone to my ear. It rang and rang and rang. It felt endless, like time itself had stretched out just to torture me, but she never picked up. I called again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. I tried Emily next. Voicemail again. Twice. Damn it, I muttered. I opened the Wells Fargo app and just stared at the balance sitting in my account. For a second, it didn't even look real. It was more money than I'd seen in one place in a long time, and under normal circumstances, I would have felt relief, maybe even gratitude. Instead, I felt sick. I didn't know what to do with myself. We had gotten back sometime in the early morning, around 8. At 8:55, I received the usual $1,000 Zelle payment too. No memo attached, nothing at all. Almost like the whole thing had become automated. I stared at the notification and quietly asked myself, was that it? Was that some kind of grand test I had to pass? Something deep down told me it wasn't. That freak in the dealer's suit must have given me some kind of painkiller, because despite having 2 fingers chopped off, I wasn't feeling nearly as much pain as I should have been. I figured I should probably look around the apartment for something to take later, just in case whatever they had pumped into me started wearing off. I was about to search the bathroom when I heard a knock at the door. Thank God for peepholes. If they hadn't been invented, I probably would have launched myself out the window onto the fire escape and disappeared forever. I looked through it and saw a familiar pair of green eyes. I opened the door and Riley hurried inside. Come in, I said sarcastically. She was clearly flustered. She took a few quick steps into the apartment, then turned around as I shut and locked the door behind her. How much have they sent you? She asked. I blinked. It was an odd first question. I shrugged. 25,000. I lied. The truth was, they had sent me around 53,000 in total by then, but I don't know what Riley's angle was yet. And after everything that had happened, I wasn't in any rush to be fully honest with anyone. She took a long breath and looked up toward the ceiling like she was trying to steady herself. Listen to me, John. We don't have a lot of time before they probably realize I'm here, and then we're both probably in trouble. I didn't interrupt. Not yet. I don't know who they are, she continued. I was getting Zelle payments of $1,000 a day for a week before I got a call from the same 1-800 number that had been sending them. They told me they'd pay me $15,000 to pick you up, drop you off, and then bring you home. They had asked me to call a 1-800 number while you were in the car and keep the call running until I dropped you off. I nodded, and before I could even ask my next question, she answered it. The voice on the phone was obviously distorted. Some kind of voice changer. Nothing recognizable about it at all. She swallowed. Anyway, when I picked you up, you were unconscious. You had a cast on, and I need to know what the hell happened in that warehouse. Part of me felt like we were being watched even then. Maybe we were. Maybe there was a camera hidden somewhere in my apartment. Maybe someone was listening through a phone or a vent or the walls themselves. But if they were, so be it. I trusted her, so I told her everything. I told her about the slot machines spinning with no one there to play them, about the second-floor casino hidden inside the warehouse, about the blackjack table, about the metal cage around my hand, about the dealer, and then Walter. The memory hit me so hard I nearly stopped speaking. Walter, my landlord. They had blown his hand apart right in front of me. His blood had sprayed across my face and the cards in the dealer's shirt, and somehow my brain had shoved that whole part into a dark corner and locked the door on it. I had watched a man die at a blackjack table, and for a while I had managed not to think about it at all. That realization brought another thought with it. Riley, I said slowly, this might be personal, but have you ever had, a gambling problem? The color drained from her face instantly. She stood there in silence for a moment, trying to process the question. That was a long time ago, John, she finally said. How do you even... Because I have one too, I said, and the guy they killed in there, Walter, he did too. Something tells me that matters more than we realize. Riley looked out the window at the rainy Philadelphia skyline. I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. Did you still get $1,000 L this morning? She asked quietly. At 8:55, I cut in. She nodded and turned back to me. John, she said, her voice thin and shaken, what the hell is going on here? We talked for hours after that. Riley had originally planned to leave, in case they were watching us somehow. But in the end, we made the decision for her to stay, at least for the night. We both felt safer that way, even if neither of us could explain why. We ordered Chinese food from Han Dynasty down the street and threw on some random Netflix show just to fill the silence. Neither of us was really watching it. It was just noise, something to make the apartment feel normal when nothing about our lives felt normal anymore. The couch was still relatively new, something I'd only bought recently, and somehow we both found comfort in sitting there together, despite everything hanging over us. The city lights glowed through the windows, the rain kept tapping away against the glass, and for a little while, the apartment almost felt warm. We were just about to start talking again after a long stretch of silence when a strange smell drifted through the room. I sat up. Do you smell that? Riley shot upright immediately and nodded. Yeah, it smells like... Her voice faded out. Then her body slumped sideways, and her head dropped into my lap. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. My limbs were growing heavy too fast. My thoughts slowing down like they were sinking underwater. My vision began to darken around the edges. The last thing I saw before everything went black was my apartment door slowly creaking open. Then, nothing. When I woke up, the smell hit me first. That same foul, rotting chemical stench. I knew where I was before I even opened my eyes. It was the warehouse. The sun was setting outside, but the building was still dim because the surrounding trees blocked most of the light from coming through the shattered glass windows. When I sat up, I realized immediately that this was different. We weren't upstairs. We were on the first floor this time, not at the casino level. And more than that, I couldn't hear the slot machines at all. A small whimper came from my right. I turned and saw Riley stirring awake in the chair beside me. Her eyes opened slowly, and even though she had never actually been inside this place before, I could tell from the look on her face that she knew exactly where we were. Ah, players, back so soon, the dealer called out cheerfully. Well, player, I should say. Riley, you are our newest addition. His voice was practically glowing with excitement. He wheeled out a gigantic spinning wheel and positioned it in front of us. But it wasn't the wheel itself that unsettled me. It was what was written on it. There were only two options. Kill and increase. That was it. Nothing else. The sections were split unevenly across the wheel, but there wasn't much to interpret beyond the words themselves. Riley saw it too. Her eyes went wide. Now, the dealer said, still grinning, you two were not originally meant to be contestants in another game, but it seems you got a little sneaky behind our backs and started plotting without direct permission from our commission. What does that even mean? Riley asked before I could. He looked at her almost pleasantly. You cheated. Neither of us said a word. We just sat there, cold and silent, as he carefully centered the wheel in front of us. Now it's time for a little game, he said. I'm sure you both know how roulette works. Well, of course you do. This is just like that. with one small twist. Instead of red or black, we have kill or increase. He spread his hands toward the wheel like a game show host presenting a prize. The rules are very simple. You will each take turns spinning the wheel. If it's your turn and you land on kill, the other person will be murdered in cold blood, right here in front of you. Riley and I looked at each other. But, he added brightly, if it lands on increase, then lucky you, because the total pot increases. It currently starts at $50,000 and goes up by $50,000 every time it lands on increase. He was enjoying this. That was the worst part. He was enjoying every second of it. Now, he continued, if at any point you wish to stop playing, the player whose turn it is may say withdraw, and the two of you will split whatever remains in the pot. However, if it lands on kill and the other player is murdered, you receive the full pot. Does that make sense? Withdraw, Riley said immediately. The dealer laughed. Oh no, sweetie, it's not your turn first, but very brave of you. Then he looked at me. Jonathan, he said, smiling wide, you had some fantastic luck at blackjack last night. Care to test that luck again? My mind started racing. If it landed on increase twice, the pot would hit $150,000. That would put me so close to getting Emily her tuition money back that I could almost see it. The thought shot through me so fast it felt like electricity. My pulse started climbing, my mouth went dry. Riley must have seen something in my face. Jonathan? The truth was, I hardly knew her. If we withdrew immediately, we would each walk away with $25,000. Not bad at all. But 50-50 odds were good, right? And if it hit increase, spin the wheel, I blurted. Oh my gosh. The words came out before I could fully think them through. Riley looked at me in absolute horror. Ah, yes, Mr. Willman, the dealer said happily. Old habits die hard, I suppose. He gestured for me to come closer. I stood up, walked to the wheel, and grabbed it before I had time to stop myself. Then I spun it hard. The thing clicked and rattled as it turned. I held my breath. Riley held hers too. It seemed to spin forever. Then somehow, not long enough at all. As if it started to slow. I wanted to shut my eyes. I wanted to take it back. I wanted to scream at myself. What the hell had I just done? The white arrow clinked one final time and stopped. Increase, the dealer announced. Very, very good, Jonathan. The pot is now $100,000. Riley, you're up. Spin the wheel, please, she said flatly. Only then did the reality of it hit me. If it landed on kill, I would be the one who died. She walked back to the wheel and spun it while the dealer clapped his hands together in this awful clownish little rhythm, like he was watching animals perform for him in a circus. I thought of Emily. I imagined her standing in the corner of that room, watching her father spin a wheel for the chance to win back the college tuition he had gambled away. They always tell you to never chase your losses, but what exactly do you call this? If I died right there, what would I die as? A father? Or just another addict making one last stupid bet? I was so lost in my own thoughts that I almost forgot to watch the wheel. Then it stopped. Oh, look at that, the dealer said. Increase again. The pot is now $150,000. Jonathan, shall we run that up even more? I took one breath. Withdraw, please. The dealer frowned, genuinely disappointed. Well. It seems Jonathan has had enough fun for the day. Congratulations, players. You were each going to be zelled $75,000. It's strange what you notice only after the fact. For one thing, we weren't chained down when we woke up. The chairs hadn't been locked. We were able to stand, walk, spin the wheel ourselves. Nothing physically held us there. Would they actually have let us leave if we tried? I don't know. But the thought lodged itself in my mind anyway. If I had walked out during blackjack, would they really have stopped me? Or had I trapped myself more than they ever did? I felt Riley's eyes on me. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked up. Let's go, she said. She walked right past the dealer and headed for the exit. The dealer smiled at me as I started to follow her. We should get you a rewards card soon, Jonathan. For one sharp, violent moment, I wanted to lunge at him. I wanted to beat him until his teeth cracked against the warehouse floor. But then I saw the cameras mounted high in the corners of the room. Watching. Always watching. So instead, I just looked at him, gave a small nod, and walked out into the cold night air. Outside, the sun had fully disappeared behind the tree line surrounding the warehouse. Riley's car was still there, waiting. And for some reason, that surprised me. The ride home was quiet for the first half of it. At some point, sitting there in the passenger seat with the road sliding by and the river glinting dark beside us, I realized Riley hadn't blindfolded me. The first time, I had been half dead from painkillers and blood loss, drifting in and out after losing fingers. This time, we were both awake. We were both fully conscious, and she hadn't bothered. Neither of us seemed to know what to say. On one hand, we were each $75,000 richer. On the other hand, we had just taken turns gambling with each other's lives for the chance to make that number climb even higher. "Where are you taking me?" I finally asked. Riley didn't so much as glance in my direction. "Where they told me to take you," she said. "Home." I shifted awkwardly in my seat. My throat felt tight. "Riley, Save it, John," she snapped. That got me to shut up. I may be recovering from a gambling addiction, but no part of me wanted to do that. You, on the other hand, her voice caught. You had this look in your eyes, this hunger, this... She didn't have to finish. I could hear the tears in her voice. I could feel the weight of what I had done hanging in the car between us, heavier than either of us could put into words. So I stayed quiet and let the silence sit there with us as we drove along the river. Somewhere earlier on the drive, I had seen a Delaware sign pass by in the dark, which meant we had been even farther out than I thought. I had betrayed her. In one blinding rush of adrenaline, I had risked her life, both of our lives, for the chance at a bigger payout. I didn't want to do any of this anymore. I wanted it to stop. I wanted all of it to go away. But I was an addict, and at that point, I had run out of people willing or able to save me from myself. Riley dropped me off outside my apartment and sped away into the night. I knew the extra $75,000 was sitting in my account waiting for me. I couldn't bring myself to look at it. I just walked inside. The pills were sitting on the nightstand, exactly where I'd left them. I had bought them from a guy in one of the alleys near my place not long after the court hearing. Sleeping pills. At the time, I had told myself it was just something to have, just in case things got bad enough. I never actually used them. At least, not until that night. I stood there staring at them, feeling hollow. I hoped my daughter would understand someday. I hoped her mother might too. I never meant to hurt anyone. I really wanted help. I had wanted to be better. But there are some people in this world who are broken in a way that doesn't go back together right. Once an addict, always an addict. No matter how badly I wanted to believe I had changed, I had relapsed in the only way that mattered, and it had almost gotten an innocent woman killed. Now it was going to cost me my own life. I tipped an obscene number of pills into my palm as tears filled my eyes. For a second, I thought about writing letters, but who was I kidding? Who would even want to read them? My own daughter didn't want to see me, and she was the only person I would have written to anyway. I grabbed the bottle of water with my damaged hand and sat down on the bed. Then my phone started buzzing. I let out a bitter, broken laugh. "Oh, for fuck's sake," I muttered. "I can't even die correctly." I pulled the phone out and looked at the screen. The caller ID made my heart stop. I answered so fast, I almost dropped it. "Lily?" "Hey, Dad. Yeah, real quick," she said. "I just wanted to know if you have my birth certificate. My school needs it for something. I didn't even want to call. I was going to have Mom stop over tomorrow, but..." She stopped. She could hear me crying. I could hear myself, too. These pathetic little hiccuping sobs breaking out of me. "Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said quickly. "I have it. I'll bring it by tomorrow. I have it in my glove box in my car. I'll stop by tomorrow." "Oh," she said. "Okay, thanks." Then she hung up. Just like that. I collapsed back into the bed, and this time the tears came hard. No holding them back, no swallowing them down. Just ugly, childish sobbing as the pills slipped from my hand and scattered across the floor. I must have fallen asleep like that, half curled on the mattress, because the next thing I knew, my phone was vibrating at exactly 8:55 a.m. I opened my eyes, groggy and puffy-faced, and checked the screen. Another $1,000 L. This one had a memo. 118 Canopy Lane. Come now. I stared at it. Again with this ghost address shit, I muttered to myself. For a second, I considered ignoring it, saying screw your Zells, screw your disappearing house, screw all of you. But the come now part felt urgent, and after everything that had happened, I wanted to know who the sick bastard behind all this really was. One thing stood out immediately. This Zell came from a different number. Still a 1-800 number, still faceless, still bizarre, but the last few digits were different from the others. I grabbed my keys, got in the car, and drove straight to Canopy Lane. Philadelphia was already jammed with morning traffic, so I drove like an asshole just to keep up. By some miracle, I made it there in 20 minutes. I half expected Riley to already be there, but the street was empty. Just me. Even in broad daylight, the block felt wrong. Quiet. Too quiet. Like the whole place had been abandoned in the middle of a sentence. I sat there for 10 minutes, then 20, then nearly 30. I was just about ready to leave when my phone buzzed again. Another Zelle. $1 this time. The memo read, black box behind 117. So they do know what 117 is, I said aloud. Good to know the typo finally got cleared up. I got out and looked up the same old boarded up house, sitting there like it had been waiting for me. I went through the side gate, wincing at the sound of rusty hinges scraping against themselves. The narrow walkway led into a backyard, buried in grass so tall it nearly reached my waist. I looked toward the collapsed back porch and didn't see any black box at first. Then my foot struck something hidden in the grass. I looked down. There it was, a black box. I crouched, picked it up, and saw right away that there was no lock or latch, and lifted the lid and just stared. Inside was a full set of scuba gear. Not old gear, not worn out gear, not random thrift store junk. It looked brand new. One of the fins still had the tag hanging from it. There was a note sitting on top. 118 Canopy. Dive tonight at 12 a.m. No later, no earlier. I read it twice. Then I looked up at the river. Dive? I whispered. Dive where? Then it clicked. 118 Canopy, I said softly. My eyes locked on the water. Part of me wondered why they hadn't just given me the gear at midnight and told me to jump in right then. Another part of me figured they wanted me to prepare. Maybe they knew I'd never really gone scuba diving before and wanted to make sure I didn't die before I reached whatever they were trying to show me. So I spent the entire day cramming. I watched YouTube tutorials. I read guides online. I fell down Reddit rabbit holes filled with people calling each other idiots over air valves and regulator hoses. By 11 that night, I felt like I at least had a rough idea of what I was doing. Roughly. I drove back out to Canopy and sat in my car waiting. The whole thing was insane. There was no other word for it. I was willingly following instructions delivered to me through anonymous Zelle payments like some kind of trained dog. Up until this point, it had injected a strange sense of adrenaline and purpose into my dead little life. But it had also nearly pushed me into swallowing a bottle of sleeping pills the night before. I tried not to think about that part. A pair of headlights pulled in behind me. I checked the mirror and saw Riley climbing out of her car. She walked up to my driver's side window and tapped the glass. "Ready for a swim?" she asked. I rolled the window down. She told me her instructions had been almost the same as mine, except hers specifically said not to leave the car until midnight, to waste no time, and to go straight into the water. She had been told to collect a scuba suit too, shortly after I found mine. What struck me most was what she didn't say. She didn't mention roulette. She didn't mention the way I had nearly gotten her killed. After the way we'd left things, I had figured whatever fragile connection we had was shattered for good, but there she was. At 11:57, my heart was already racing. Did they tell us where to dive, I asked, or what we were looking for, or were we just supposed to go digging around at the bottom of the river like idiots? Riley shook her head. Based on everything they've done so far, she said, I think they're trusting us to figure it out. Brave of them. I didn't say that out loud. At 11:58, I looked over at her. Hey, I said quietly, no matter what happens here, I'm sorry about the roulette game. She took a deep breath and stared out through the windshield. My first husband left me because of my addiction to roulette, she said. Really, I blew through our savings, took out loans in our names, everything. All just to watch a stupid ball spin around a stupid wheel and maybe win stupid money that I was just going to throw back into more stupid wheels. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Once an addict, always an addict, I guess. Then she went quiet again, and we let the moment sit there between us. 12 a.m. We stepped out of our cars at the same time and walked down toward the riverbank. I had read earlier that the water here wasn't incredibly deep, but it was deep enough. Deep enough that once you got near the bottom, it was nothing but darkness. No moonlight, no visibility, just black. Our suits had flashlights attached. The note had said midnight, no exceptions, so I nodded at Riley, clicked my light on, and jumped. The water was freezing, but strangely still. The beam from my flashlight cut a narrow path through the darkness ahead of me, and the rest of the river closed in around it like a living thing. I was not prepared for how unsettling that would feel. A second later, I noticed Riley's light on me. I turned and saw her pointing downward. We swam, and kept swimming. It felt like forever before we reached the bottom. When we did, it was complete blackness except for our two little beams of light. I hated every second of it. Riley looked at me through her mask and pointed again. That was when I saw it. A small red light blinking faintly through a cluster of garbage tangled on the river floor. I nodded, and the two of us swam toward it. It wasn't far, but what we found there still stopped me cold. A hatch, built directly into the bottom of the river. I swam down and tugged at it, and it didn't move. Then the red light began spinning in a circle like a silent underwater siren, flooding the water around us with a dim, hellish glow. A mechanical sound followed, low and distant, and the hatch began to open. Bright white light spilled out from below. Riley and I looked at each other, then swam down into it. The chamber below was completely flooded. It felt like stepping into some kind of under-river airlock, all metal walls and sharp industrial corners, less like a room and more like something from a spaceship. The hatch above us sealed shut. The room was just large enough for the two of us to stand apart from each other. Then another mechanical noise started up, and slowly, painfully slowly, the water began to drain out. It took a few minutes before the floor was dry enough to stand on. Once it was, Riley and I stood there dripping in silence, until we noticed the metal door along the wall. It clicked softly, then cracked open on its own. Carved into the steel were the numbers, 118. We stepped through. The hallway beyond was long and narrow, lined with pipes overhead and stray wires drooping from the concrete walls. It reminded me of a subway tunnel, only cleaner, quieter, more deliberate. Riley and I walked for what felt like 5 full minutes without saying a word. Then the hallway opened into a much larger room. Even before I understood what I was looking at, I knew this was the center of it all. There were couches arranged around the room, one massive screen mounted on the far wall, and several smaller monitors surrounding it. The screens displayed different locations. An empty forest, the inside of an abandoned house, and then my stomach dropped. I had only been there twice, but I would have recognized that room anywhere. The wheel was still there in the center of the screen, clear as day. The 2 chairs Riley and I had sat in less than 24 hours earlier were still positioned exactly where they had been when we left. Riley said nothing, neither did I. Then a voice behind us made us both jump. "Welcome to 118 Canopy." We turned. A tall man stood there in a black robe, carrying a stack of papers in one arm. His face was old, thin, almost hollowed out by time. "How was your trip down?" he asked. Neither of us answered. For one insane second, I wondered if maybe I had taken the pills after all, and this was simply the private hell my brain had built for me. "Who are you?" Riley asked, her voice sharp. The man walked calmly over to a desk and sat down in a leather chair. "Ah, how rude of me," he said. "I'm Elias. That name probably means nothing to you." I stepped toward the desk. "Is that you?" I asked. "Are you behind this?" Elias smiled and nodded. "Yes, Jonathan, it's me. I've been sending the Zells, to you and to Riley." I was ready to launch myself across the desk at him, but he kept talking. "Well, me and my team down the hall, technically. But they're all computer nerds, locked away in offices, making sure our back end stays clean from what we're doing." "What exactly are you doing?" I asked. Elias leaned back in his chair and gestured toward the monitors. "This," he said. The screens changed. Different locations flashed across them, all of them disturbingly similar to the warehouse. In each frame, 2 to 4 people were gathered around some kind of casino-style game. None of them looked happy. None of them looked free. In one frame, a man appeared to be missing an eye. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Elias looked up at the screens with something close to pride. "This," he said, pausing, "is our therapy." It took every ounce of self-control I had not to reach over that desk and strangle him. He had to be in his 70s, maybe older. His cough sounded wet and ragged, the kind of cough that made you think of hospital rooms and cigarette smoke. But there was something steady in him too, something utterly convinced of its own righteousness. Riley and I stood there in silence as he continued. "What percentage of the world do you think gambles, Jonathan?" I was still staring at the screens. I don't know. "About 26%, he said. "And how many of those become addicts?" I hesitated, and before I could answer, he did it for me. 2%. Now, I know that sounds small, but addiction is underreported. Shame keeps people quiet. Self-reporting is unreliable. And beyond that, who even gets to decide what addictive gambling behavior really is? And what is simply gambling? I finally looked at him. "In my opinion," Elias said, "all gambling is addictive. You see, Jonathan, you, and Riley probably started small. Everyone starts small. Then they spend a little more. Then a little more. That's how the system works. That's how they want it to work." He placed a stack of papers on the desk and spread them out. "Thousands of new people today alone. Through surveillance, we've identified gamblers around the world spending excessive amounts, displaying compulsive patterns, chasing losses, pacing, sweating, spiraling. We have people across the world in casinos. Some of them even work there." He chuckled to himself, like he had just told us something clever. "Gamblers do not associate losing money with survival until we make it about actual survival. So many people blow through their husband's money, their daughter's college tuition, their spouse's income, and they never stop to understand what they are really risking." Riley and I exchanged a look. "That ruined lives," Elias went on. "Suicides, divorce, debt, ruined quality of life. Some people say gambling is the worst addiction a person can have, so what are we doing here?" He stood. "We make people associate gambling with survival. We make it life or death, because in reality, it always was. It doesn't feel like that when you are burning your daughter's tuition, your retirement account, your wife's life insurance, but that's what it is." He pointed up toward the screens. "Once someone completes our therapy program, 99.7% of them never gamble again, ever, because now they associate it with this: fear, blood, survival. That's how it should have always been understood. Casinos run ads every hour on every platform in the world, glorifying this disease, and it works." He looked back at us. "I'm teaching it to stop working." Riley shook her head slowly. "There's got to be another way to do this, Elias." He shook his head right back. "No, gambling relapse is among the highest relapse rates of any addiction. GA, therapy, traditional treatment. None of it works well enough for something like this." His eyes began to water. "Those things didn't work for me." He sat down again and looked toward a framed picture on his desk. "I lost so much of my wife and I's savings that she took her own life," he said, "and my daughter thinks I'm dead." That shut both of us up. "I went through this program myself," Elias said quietly, "and it worked, so it will work for others." The weight of what he was saying hit the room all at once. He believed this. This was the most terrifying part. Then Elias folded his hands and looked at us with renewed focus. "But of course," he said, "explanation is not therapy. Choice is therapy." My stomach sank. He continued. "So, I'm going to give you both a choice today. You may both leave here alive, but all the money you received must be repaid to the Zelle account that sends it." He let that sit for a second. "Or one of you may die here and the other can leave with their money. The other person's money and an additional 100,000 on top of it." Riley and I looked at each other at the exact same time. "Before either of you speak," Elias said, raising a hand, "the vote must be fair. I will give each of you a piece of paper. You will write either leave or kill the other. I will collect the papers and read the answers aloud." "What if we both vote to kill each other?" Riley asked immediately. Elias didn't flinch. "Then you both die, and no one leaves." He handed us each a slip of paper, a pencil, and what looked almost like a sympathetic nod. I stared down at mine. Emily, Lily, Walter, the blackjack table, Riley in the roulette room, looking at me like she no longer recognized me. My hand shook as I wrote. Then I folded the paper and handed it over. Riley did the same. Elias took both notes and smiled faintly. "Quick," he said. "Usually people take a few minutes." He lifted up the papers. "Riley," he said, "let's read yours first." He opened it slowly, then looked up at me before turning it around. The word leave was written across the page. Then it was my turn. I already knew what I had written. Elias opened my note, without ceremony, and turned it towards both of us. 6 months later, I walked into a home that looked nothing like the life I had been living back then. For one thing, I didn't live in North Philadelphia anymore. I had moved out to the suburbs just beyond the city. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but it was exactly the amount of space I needed. Enough room to breathe. Enough room to build something that didn't feel like it was collapsing. I dropped my bag onto the couch and headed toward the kitchen. "Something smells good," I called out. Riley turned from the stove, wearing the little apron she always liked to cook in, smiling in that soft way that still caught me off guard sometimes. "We have a special guest coming over tonight," she said. "I wanted to make sure it's the best of the best." I smiled and wrapped my arms around her. I had just gotten home from work in the city. I was a financial analyst now, which still sounded strange when I said it out loud. Over the previous few months, my life had changed faster than I could have imagined. Riley and I had been going to GA meetings together. I had been getting promoted quickly at work, and somewhere along the line, almost every odd stacked against us, I had ended up with the woman of my dreams. Riley had moved in with me not long after the 118 canopy. She still joked, sort of, that she had been sure I was going to let her die down there. But for once in my life, I had pushed the chips away from the table and gone home. She stayed at my apartment for a few months before we had enough money to put down a payment on a house. The only times I had stepped inside a casino since then had been to add my name to the permanent self-exclusion list, which they now flagged every single time I showed up. We never told anybody about 118 Canopy, not because we forgot, and not because we were afraid. We didn't tell anyone because, in the ugliest way imaginable, it worked. It would continue to work. I was just about to go upstairs and shower when the doorbell rang. "Ah, the special guest is here," Riley called from the kitchen. I smiled and walked to the front door. When I opened it, I was met by a bright, familiar smile and a bowling bag clutched in her right hand. "Hey, kiddo." This story was one that I will never forget, honestly. And I really did love the twist of this one and the theme. And it was that the money was never the real prize. He was never actually being rewarded with the money, he was being tested. And then the main twist we find out at the very end is that Elias wasn't running those games for profit. Like, he genuinely believed he was curing gambling addiction by making people, risk their lives. The next story today is also from r/scary stories from Trash Tia. Do not babysit the Hawthorne children. You have been warned. Mom ambushed me with a question first thing this morning. "Hey, what do you think of babysitting?" I choked on my apple. I'm good. The smell of pancakes and detergent in the morning never failed to remind me that I was a disappointment. My girlfriend and I broke up, so I moved back home. I wasn't quite sure when I started to rant. Somewhere between pouring my cereal, tapping on Imogen's Instagram profile, and seeing her latest post, but it was too late to stop now. Even if I did want to destroy my body to give you the grandchildren I supposedly owe you, I'd rather not bring them into a world that doesn't give a shit about them. Mom, lips curved around the rim of her coffee mug, rolled her eyes. "Sienna." She fixed me with a disappointing glare. "It's a job. I wasn't asking for a lecture." Her gaze flicked to her phone screen. "You don't need to like children." She held it up so I could see. 3 5-year-olds. There's an option to sleep over, and she's offering $350 per child. That's pretty good. That got my attention. Sure, I dislike kids, but not kids collectively. It depends on how they were raised. Take my little stepbrother Rayleigh, for example. Insufferable iPad baby. Every time I visited my mom, there he sat, cross-legged on the floor, hypnotized by the screen while she played Mother of the Year. Which was ironic, since SpongeBob was actually putting in all the work. He is now the devil incarnate. which I threatened to break his switch because he wouldn't give it back. He burst into tears and told her I tried to push him down the stairs. I haven't been invited back. But wait, $350 each? I feigned disinterest, stirring my cereal into a soupy mess. I was slightly intrigued, begrudgingly. My phone lit up with a notification. Imogen. I averted my gaze, my stomach twisting. That much per child? That was diabolical. Either the mom was like rich, or the kids were hell's offspring. Mom raised her brows over the phone, sipping her coffee with one hand and scrolling with the other. She looked almost triumphant, a smile creeping onto her lips, like babysitting 3 brats could single-handedly change my stance on motherhood. Oh, now you're interested? Mom handed me her phone, and I took it hesitantly. There's the address. I saw a boy around your age already commented, so be quick. She leaned back. As for the lecture, sweetie, you know at some point you will be expected to have children. Her words were like needle pricks into my spine. I ignored her, just like I did when I was a teenager, and started scrolling through the comments. Sure enough, a recent college graduate named Sam, with a degree in nursing and the typing style of an MLM victim, "Hi, I'm Sam," had already attached his extensive resume. I disliked his comment, and remembering I was on my mom's account, panicked and undid it. The post itself was simple, from one Sunny Hawthorne, whose profile picture was a horse. Working mom needs a night babysitter to look after my 3 beautiful angels. We'll pay extra if you can start tonight. 3 well-behaved 5-year-old darlings who will immediately fall in love with. I tapped her profile. Private. You'd think she'd be posting these beautiful darlings publicly. Sienna, Mom said. She had that tone again. Like when I hit 20 and she immediately started hinting she wanted to be a grandmother one day. The emotional manipulation was exhausting, but she continued, because living under her roof, my mother was entitled to constantly remind me of her wishes. Your body is a clock, remember that. I would love to have a little Sienna running around my house. I'm a lesbian, I muttered, texting myself the address and all but tossing her phone at her. Mom drained her coffee. I'll pay for your IVF. I pointedly ignored that, jumping to my feet. Babysitting sounds more fun than this. Can I borrow the car? Another text from Imogen lit up my screen. I swiped it away. Mom didn't even look at me, picking at her pancakes, sitting there in her silk gown, completely financially stable, in a house she was lucky to have, with her biggest problems being that her book club got canceled or running late for her $200 manicure. Infuriating. Of course, she said, her attention already reclaimed by Facebook. By the way, Imogen called. Even when I was a kid, I never cried in front of Mom. I had a foolproof technique, pressing my knuckles into my eyes until the tears disappeared. Hiding it as an adult was harder. Imogen was the one who brought up having kids at 22, even though she knew how I felt. She said we could make it work, and I wanted to believe her, but neither of us had stable jobs. We shared the opinion until, one day, my ex-girlfriend got brainwashed by my crazy mother and suddenly wanted a huge family, and I didn't, so that was that. My throat closed up, my eyes stinging, chest aching. Suffocation wasn't an unfamiliar feeling. A hollow, agonizing something I couldn't name, twisting in my chest and bleeding into my stomach. Heartache, frustration, and the weight on my shoulders that wouldn't let me breathe. I ran out of the kitchen, pushing my knuckles into my eyes, and when that didn't work, squeezed my nose until my silent sobs subsided. I left the house with a bitter taste in my mouth. Mom's words trailed after me, a stagnant stench of familiar disappointment in the air that I couldn't escape. You know she loves you, Sienna. I think the 2 of you should talk. Imogen is the smart one, remember. I was slowly coming to the realization that I no longer wanted my mom in my life. As if she'd sprinkled her mom magic into my cereal, my opinion on motherhood shifted the moment I met the Hawthorne children. For maybe 2 seconds. The Hawthorne home was exactly what I expected. Just one in a long line of picturesque white picket fence, nuclear family cookie cutters straight out of the 1950s. I slipped on Mom's heels, tugged open the perfectly painted white gate, and clacked my way to the door. Taking a few deep breaths, I mentally rehearsed my greeting one last time. "Hi, I'm Sienna. I adore children." I knocked, my heart beating out of my chest. "Come on in," a cheery voice called from inside. The door swung open, and I was greeted by the blaring sound of what seemed to be a YouTube video playing at tinnitus-inducing volume. I took an uncertain step over the threshold, nearly tripping over a boy who was frantically trying to make his great escape to the porch. For a moment, just a moment, my cynicism about motherhood shattered, and I was left wondering if maybe Mom was right. That motherly instinct she always talked about, what I thought was BS. Was that what was coming over me? A sudden, almost feral urge to scoop up the little boy and swing him around? He was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. A curly mess of brunette tangles I immediately wanted to ruffle. When I saw cute things, whether that was cats, baby animals, or tiny objects, I immediately had a baby voice on standby. He was no exception. Chubby cheeks, wide brown eyes, and the most adorable little scowl on his face as he blinked up at me. The kid's frantic eyes flashed behind me as he made a desperate attempt to crawl through my legs. I smiled down at him. "Hello." I forced a big, friendly smile, but the boy's eyes popped open. His nostrils flared. This kid looked pissed, like ready to tantrum pissed. I understood why parents were so obsessed with keeping their kids close. Little ones really did try to toddle straight out the front door. On instinct, I bent down and lifted it in my arms. He yelped, squirming in my grip and battering me with his fists. "Let go of me." I was not expecting this 5-year-old kid to look me directly in the eyes, his little face scrunched up, tears streaming down his cheeks. I was expecting some kind of fit, but this kid was absolutely pissed. He swung his head around, trying to tear out of my arms, his little fingers reaching for the door. "I said, let me go," he screamed, battering me with his fist once again. "Let me go." I almost dropped him. "Hey," I whispered, trying to calm him. I was surprised by my own soothing tone, but it seemed to anger him even more, sending him into hysterics. "Your mom invited me," I told him. "It's okay." The kid's gaze snapped to me, and it was so fast, his head jerking almost inhumanely, a shiver slid down my spine. His eyes were narrowed, challenging. "Is it?" He spat in my face yet again, and I got a mouthful of saliva. I found myself speechless. "Let me go," he squirmed, holding my gaze for way longer than necessary. His lip quirked. "Let me go or I start screaming." I debated putting him down. Was he actually threatening me right now? I knew 5-year-olds were growing up in a different generation to me, but I was pretty sure they weren't threatening their parents. Before I could try and bargain with this kid, because making him cry was not a good look, he burst into an uncontrollable fit, and I panicked, letting him hit me in the face. "I see you've met Kazaria," a woman in her 40s with gaunt cheeks and hollow eyes greeted me with a tired smile. Sunny Hawthorne was pretty much exactly what I expected. A wiry woman in her mid-40s in a sculpted floral dress with a strict blonde ponytail. She gently scooped her screeching son out of my arms and set him down. Kazaria stopped crying. His gaze flashed to the front door, and his mother let it swing shut. He shot me one last piercing glare before scurrying away. "Kazaria is scared of new people," Sunny explained, her smile growing wider. I noticed half of her teeth were missing. "That Kazaria, that's an interesting name. Never heard that one before. Anyways. And look who else has come to see you," she laughed. Something hit me in the stomach, and I jumped, looking down at a girl about the same age as Kazaria, with wild curls hanging in her eyes. I wasn't expecting to be brutally judged by a 5-year-old. "Who are you?" the little girl demanded, folding her arms. Her stance reminded me of my mom when she was irritated. Hand on hip, head slightly tilted, her eyes shot to Miss Hawthorne, narrowing. Wow, this kid looked like she called the shots. "You know my brothers don't like new people," she scowled at her mother before grabbing my bag I'd just plopped down. The girl shoved it into my chest hard enough to hurt, making me stumble back out the door. "You can go now." Melody Hawthorne, Sunny snapped, her expression twisting. I noticed the little girl flinch when she raised her voice, ducking her head. The woman shot me an apologetic look. You're old enough to know that was rude. Say sorry to your babysitter. Melody wouldn't meet my gaze. She'll scare my brothers, she whispered, her voice choking up. I don't like her. She put way too much emphasis on like, which made me consider walking away. The way she shied away from me made me wonder if I looked scary. Was I too tall? There was no worse truth than a child's brutal honesty, and I wasn't exactly thrilled to look after this spoiled little brat anyway. Her mother, however, refused to let it go. I said, she said in a scary, commanding tone, and the girl ducked her head further. Apologize. Melody sniffled, glaring down at the floor, gripping the material of her dress. Sorry, she spat. Sunny planted her hands on her hips. I wondered if Melody was copying her mother. Chicken. Her tone was deliciously condescending. I was silently cheering her on. Look your babysitter in the eye and say you're sorry. The little girl stamped her foot as if she was about to follow her brother's footsteps. Instead, she met my gaze, her expression twitching, lips wobbling like it was physically painful for her. Her eyes surprised me, darker than I expected for a child, hollow, like maybe her mother wasn't as nice as I thought. She was trembling, fingers curled into fists. The way she swiped at her tears and tried to blink them back reminded me of my younger self. I found my voice, strangled and small, like I was a kid again. It's fine, I said, forcing a smile at Melody, effortlessly sliding into my baby voice. I knew I was grimacing. I knew, in some unspoken language between me and this little nightmare, that Melody could tell I wasn't playing games. Melody's glare might as well have been a knife splitting into my open skull. So sharp, so unapologetic. Really, it's okay, I insisted, lying through my teeth. I'm sure Melody is just looking out for her brothers, I added, smiling wider. The hellspawn refused to show weakness, settling on a rebellious death glare that I could have sworn felt physical, like laser death rays that would scorch my eyes out any second. Melody shot a glance at her mother, who was waiting patiently, before throwing her head back and marching back into the house. Sunny sighed, watching her daughter disappear down the hall in a pink huff. I apologize, she said, ushering me inside. I stepped in hesitantly, half expecting an ambush of killer kids. As you can probably tell, my children are gifted. Wow, she's already gone through all of this, and she's like barely inside the door. I slipped out of my shoes, aware of Khazaria in the corner of my eye, glaring at me. The house was beautiful, warm and homely. The smell of chili drifted in from the kitchen, while the modern minimalist decor eased the knot in my stomach. Sunny led me down a hallway where a staircase curved upstairs, the wall lined with framed photos of the kids all the way up. Sunny, of course, continued her gifted children rant as she led the tour. Melody and Khazaria both exhibit remarkable intelligence, she went on, her voice carrying an almost narcissistic smugness. They're already at an advanced reading level. I rolled my eyes. Of course these kids were baby geniuses. They're very different to other children, she said. I would almost say that they're child prodigies. Melody is on track for a Pulitzer Prize, while Khazaria's art is displayed in the town gallery. Sunny nudged me toward the staircase. The downstairs bathroom is out of bounds. She switched back to professional. If the children need the bathroom, you will accompany them. If they protest, they lose screen time. Ouch. Admiring the hallway's paint job, a bright, sunny yellow, I noticed among the photos of the younger kids, an older brunette boy, teenage-aged, scowling in a private school uniform. He was the spitting image of his younger brother, sitting cross-legged on his bed, arms folded. I turned to Sunny. Do you have older children? Her gaze flicked briefly to the photo. Ah, that's my eldest son, she said, her tone softening. I lost him a few years ago. Something in my gut tightened. I was half watching Khazaria trying to act subtle, hiding behind his mother. He caught my eye, sticking out his tongue. "I am so sorry for your loss," I said. Instead of showering Miss Hawthorne in sympathy, though, I tried a lighter tone. "I don't think he liked being on camera," I laughed. "Was he always like that?" Sunny's expression lit up, like she was glad I'd asked. "He was always pulling that face," she chuckled. The way she stared longingly at her dead son choked me up. Khazaria was tugging at my dress, and I subtly thwacked his fist away. His mother traced her fingers over the frame hesitantly. "You can't see it, but I asked him specifically to pose in that exact spot. There's a chocolate cupcake behind him." She winked at me. 18 years old, and the only time he would go near a camera with his siblings was through bribery. Her smile soured slightly. Then, of course, he started college and just threw it all away. I found myself entranced by the boy in the photo, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "How did your son die?" "Ooh, yeah, no, you don't ask that." Suddenly, it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Her expression darkened. She turned away from the photo. "Sienna, the moment you came inside my house, you made an unspoken promise to care and respect my children." Sunny pulled the photo off the wall with a violent tug before turning back to me. "I would appreciate you staying out of my family's business." Ooh, that's cold, but she shouldn't have asked that question. She paused, and I could see vulnerability beneath her carefully made-up facade. Miss Hawthorne was slowly cracking. "My son died from an overdose," she said, her voice unwavering and eerily sterile. "While he was extremely gifted like his siblings, my son was also a deeply damaged boy who chose to prioritize his social life over education. He didn't ask for help and died peacefully at home with his mother and siblings by his side." When I couldn't find my words, she gestured toward the living room. "Shall we continue the tour, or would you like his name, too?" Khazaria grumbled something under his breath, and I shot him a look. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said, pushing my voice to sound sincere. Sunny shrugged. "You're not the first, and certainly won't be the last, to ask questions." Her lips curved into a condescending smile. "I appreciate your apology. I'll chalk this up to a simple misunderstanding. I'm sure you, unlike my children, were raised by a mother who didn't care to teach you basic manners." "Excuse me?" I couldn't swallow my squeak. Miss Hawthorne turned her attention to her son, bending down to ruffle his hair. Khazaria pushed her away, narrowing his eyes at me. "It's a learning curve, Sienna," she finished, moving back down the hallway. "Why don't we go and meet my third and final child?" Khazaria shot me the side-eye, letting out a quiet huff, his eyes staring daggers at his mother. "Well, what do you know? We had a mutual enemy." "Sienna," Miss Hawthorne snapped, hurrying me along. "Today, please." I followed her into the dining room, where Melody sat on the carpet with a book. The room was charming and bright, fairy lights decorating the wall, gossamer curtains, and bay windows behind a couch sitting in front of the TV, dining table on the other side. Another small boy sat at the table with his knees drawn to his chest, head inclined, mouth slightly open. He reminded me of a cherub, bright blue eyes framed by a mop of golden curls. It took me a moment to realize his vacant stare was stuck to the TV, which wasn't actually on. "Stevie, what did I tell you about slouching?" Sunny gently sat him up. I didn't like the way his head lolled, his flickering eyes never leaving the black screen. She shook him, and the boy snapped out of it, his eyes lazily rolling to me before almost popping out of his head. He jerked to a sitting position. "Holy shit," the little boy blinked rapidly at me. "Who's she?" Next to me, Khazaria burst into giggles, and I had to bite down on my lower lip. Melody, hiding behind her upside-down book, let out a snort, her shoulders shaking. A scarlet blush flooded Miss Hawthorne's cheeks. "Stevie," she spoke calmly, maintaining her perfect smile. "What did we talk about?" Stevie groaned, tipping his head back. Khazaria, who dived onto the couch next to him, giggled. "Think before I speak." Miss Hawthorne's expression hardened. "Think before I speak what?" The boy buried his head in his knees, grumbling. "Think before I speak, Mommy." Miss Hawthorne straightened up, turning her attention to me. "Stevie has what we call a photographic memory for vocabulary. He picks up anything he hears and can mimic it." Her smile curdled. That, of course, includes curse words. She didn't give me a chance to respond, and I was still struggling to come to terms with a 5-year-old cursing like a teenager. All right, that concludes the tour. I think that's everything. She turned to the kids, who were strangely quiet, sandwiched together on the sofa. Miss Hawthorne pecked each of them goodbye. Khazaria tried to bat her away, but she was up ready for him, pulling him into a squeeze. From his frantic eyes, he clearly didn't enjoy it, or the peppering of kisses on his forehead. Melody seemed to share the sentiment, pretending to gag. Stevie stuck his head between his knees, avoiding her attempt at goodbye kisses. Their body language was hard to ignore. These children despised their own mother. Why, I wondered, the question haunting the back of my mind. My thoughts snapped back to the photo of her dead son. Miss Hawthorne was undeniably controlling. Maybe the three of them secretly hated her for pushing their older brother to the point of overdose. Goodbye, darlings, their mother murmured, and the kids, like puppets on strings, nodded with wide smiles. I'll be back tomorrow morning, all right? Okay, Mom, all three chorused. Melody's grin faltered slightly, and Khazaria subtly elbowed her, his own widening. When she had gone, they dropped the act. Melody swiped at her lips, and Khazaria screwed up his face. Blah! He stuck out his tongue, wiping his hands on Melody. She always kisses with wet lips. I avoided her. Stevie shot him a grin, and his brother shoved him. Yeah, because you're her least favorite. Melody grabbed a cushion and thwacked him in the face, giggling. Khazaria scowled, hitting her back, which is a good thing. Stevie was hit in the face and started screaming. You're so annoying. Khazaria hit him again. I barely touched you. Stevie picked up the TV remote to bludgeon his brother, and I snatched it off him before I could witness him commit a felony. Stay here, I told the three of them, and to their credit, they did actually stop hitting each other. I switched on the TV and played Bluey. The three of them started trying to kill each other halfway through the first episode, and so began my babysitting job from hell. After witnessing him unable to sit still for more than a second, I had already mentally diagnosed Khazaria with ADHD. He could barely focus on the TV, tried to hit Stevie over the head with it. His eyes were constantly flitting from one thing to another, and he got angry easily. Melody thrived on attention, pretending to throw up the tiniest amount of saliva and declare she was sick. Stevie was, objectively, the only normal one, though his obsession with trying to murder his brother was concerning. While Khazaria was playful with his hits, Stevie was actively trying to hurt him. I had to suggest they built a fort so I could childproof the house after they started fighting. Dinner time was challenging. All three refused to eat. Surprise, surprise. These kids may have been Satan's offspring, but the food provided was lukewarm chili. Nausea curled in my gut, watching it drip from the spoon in a splodgy lump. Khazaria said what we were all thinking. I am not eating that, he announced, running into the living room. Melody immediately turned up her nose at the plate and demanded actual food. I tried everything. She hated spaghetti, mac and cheese, even Pop-Tarts, throwing a fit. She followed me around, hands on hips. I want sushi, the little girl demanded. California rolls with spicy mayo. She propped herself up on the counter while I was making pancakes for Stevie. Make me sushi. The heat from the oven was overbearing. I was sweating, my ears ringing, my cheeks burning. I can't make that for you, Melody, I hissed, scanning the cupboards for flour. Why not? Melody, I slipped on one of her books, almost falling on my ass. Stevie, from his place at the table, giggled. I want California rolls with spicy mayo, Melody screamed while I ran back and forth between the refrigerator and the cooktop, trying to make Stevie's pancakes. She drummed her hands on the cupboards, pushed chairs over, even got Stevie, who was mostly confused, to join in. We want California rolls. Oh, it was we now. I turned to the scarlet-faced brat, suppressing the deep urge to scream in her face. Hey, I crouched in front of her, we don't have California rolls. I squeezed her shoulders. Do you want me to make you something similar? When her expression softened, I knew I had her. Why don't I make you vegetarian sushi? Hey, lady, Khazaria shouted from the living room. Why don't you just order sushi? Melody, now fully supported by her brother, nodded smugly. I couldn't resist spitting out, "Thanks, kid." I wasn't expecting his response. "Welcome." California rolls. Melody held out her hand like I was a wizard who could magically vomit out ready-made sushi. Now. Stevie blinked at me in terror, catapulting pancakes in my face. He didn't like Nutella. I tried to remove the chocolate, and he collapsed into sobs, saying I ruined them. Melody continued her sushi tirade until I threatened her with bedtime. Instead, she summoned crocodile tears and accepted veggie rolls, before promptly dumping them in the trash and retiring to the couch. Kazaria, meanwhile, was doing who knows what in the living room. By the time 9 p.m. came around, I was mentally exhausted. They weren't sleepy. Of course they were hyper. I found myself in the kitchen around 10, trying to make myself coffee, when a crash sounded from upstairs. Kaz! I was already on a nickname basis with him. He was going to give me an aneurysm. Within 2 hours, he'd knocked down a bookcase and drew a very crude drawing on the wall. When I asked where he learned it, he threw the pen at me. Okay, so, little sidebar here. Is the scary part of this story just that kids, just kids? Is that it? That's the scary part? Like, that the kids are just terrible? Middle school, idiot. Kaz mimicked my voice before performing a clumsy cartwheel, head first into the stone fireplace. Melody squealed, hiding behind her book. Stevie, for unknown reasons, grabbed the remote. To my surprise, the hellspawn didn't erupt into a fit. Instead, Kaz lay there, his feet still in the air, while my heart was racing. "Hey lady," he mumbled when I helped him sit up. I checked his head for a concussion, but he seemed fine. Kaz blinked up at me, and for the first time, I saw real pain in his eyes. "My brain hurts." I wrapped my arms around him, surprised by my own affection. He tried to pull away, squirming, but I held him tighter. "It's okay," I told him. "That's not your brain that's hurting." I playfully bopped him on the head. "That's your head, Kaz." "No, pretty sure it's my brain," he grumbled. I pulled away. "Why don't you sit down and rest?" He opened his mouth to respond, glancing at the others. Stevie and Melody were standing together, wide-eyed. Kaz shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping on the floor. "I need to tell you something." "Oh?" I squeezed his shoulder, expecting a mess he was yet to reveal, pre-head smash. "What is it?" "Kaz." Melody's tone was suddenly terrifyingly cold, just like her mother's. Stevie nodded in silent agreement, shaking his head in one single jerk. I noticed the silent communication between them. Kaz's eyes narrowed, scrunching up his nose. Stevie glared at him, his lip curling. Melody stamped her foot in finality. "All right," I folded my arms. I figured I'd gain their respect by the way the three of them suddenly looked incredibly guilty. "What did you do?" Kaz rolled his eyes, sticking out his tongue at them before turning to me. "Never mind," he exclaimed, crossing his arms and turning away. Later, Stevie and Melody were fast asleep on the couch. They were so cute when they weren't conscious. I was hovering over them, trying to think of the best way to scoop them up and take them to bed, when a scream startled me. Kaz. Running upstairs and bursting in, I found the boy sitting in a dry tub. "Kaz!" I grabbed him, yanking him up. "Go away!" the boy shrieked, trembling. Red drops splattering the porcelain tub sent my heartbeat into overdrive. Dropping down beside him, I searched frantically for cuts, but found nothing. "Kaz!" My breath became heavy. "Where are you bleeding? Can you show me?" "No," he whined, lurching toward the toilet. "Just let me... My head hurts," he whispered, panting, his sharp breaths breaking into sobs. "My brain is too big." I sighed, relieved when I found no cuts or bruises. Gently, I pulled him away from the toilet. "Why don't I put you to bed?" I gave him a toothbrush, and he threw it in my face. "Screw you," he grumbled, sticking his pinky in his ear. "My brain hurts." "So does mine." I couldn't resist snapping back. "It's called a headache." When I helped him stand up, he tumbled out of the bathtub and dived into his mother's room, slamming the door. I tried the handle. Locked. "Kaz," I knocked. I was slowly losing my cool. Open the door. I just need to make sure you're okay. Then you can have as many tantrums as you want. Go away. The voice slammed into me like a wave of ice water. Adult. I ran downstairs, but I couldn't remember where my phone was. I grabbed a knife instead, bounding back up the stairs and forced the door open. There, on his knees, panting, was a grown man. Excuse me? For a moment, I was paralyzed. I opened my mouth to scream his name when the man doubled over, a screech ripping from his limbs. Damn it! The man sobbed as he doubled over, spitting blood. I can't find it. He pawed blindly across the floor. I can't find it. He turned to me, blinking wildly, eyes half-focused, blood pouring from his nose. Please, he whimpered, his voice collapsing into a gut-churning wail as he jerked violently. You've got to help me. Something came apart inside me when I realized what he meant, a vicious, agonizing dread beginning to take over me. I tried taking a shaky step back, but I couldn't move. His skin undulated like a snake, rippling up and down his spine. A fleshy lump of pink slid out of his ear, bleeding down the back of his neck. His brain was too big. The man groaned, burying his head in his arms. My name's Kaz Hawthorne. I'm 23, he gasped, coughing up a mouthful of blood onto the carpet before collapsing to his knees. That psycho witch, he spat, swiping at the pinkish froth on his chin. His brain was leaking out of his ears, I thought dizzily. His eyes were wild, desperate, and hauntingly familiar. Slowly, he staggered to his feet, arms windmilling like a child's, and I found myself scrambling back, shaking my head. She keeps turning me into a kid, and I can't find my doll. He stumbled closer, and realization sunk in. The photo. You're him, I choked out. He surprised me with a grin, childlike even when he didn't mean it to be. Mom said we failed, so we needed to start again. He dropped onto his knees, crawling under the bed. Where's my doll? Doll? I whispered. Kaz nodded, tearing Miss Hawthorne's room apart. Mom's dollhouse. We need to find it. My brain was already whirring. Start again, I thought. From birth? Without thinking, I grabbed the tissue and gagged, wiping pinkish sticky ooze from his face. Slow down, what do you mean? His eyes were scaring me, rolling back and forth like he was fighting to stay awake. I winced at the sludge running from his ear. Your mom did this to you because you didn't live up to her expectations? He didn't respond, holding up my phone. My phone. I've got your phone, his voice slurred, and he tipped sideways. Whoa. I steadied him. Stay still. Kaz's eyes were hollow, vacant and wrong like they didn't belong. I need to call my fiancée and tell her. He choked on a sob, tapping the screen. I don't know. I just need to... Damn it, I need to see her. She thinks I overdosed on coke, man. He grabbed me, just like a kid, his nails digging into my wrist. I'm 23, he whispered, as if he was trying to convince not just me, but himself. He finally let go, attempting to dart away, but his body gave up. When the man hit the ground, I grabbed a blanket and threw it over him. I can't move, Sienna, he whispered. I need to get out of this house. I can't breathe. She's always there, suffocating me. I can't breathe. She's going to kill me. Hey, idiot! Another adult voice startled me. Twisting around, a looming man with thick blonde hair stood. His eyes narrowed at Kaz. I told you. Stevie. Acid filled my mouth. Miss Hawthorne had turned her adult children into babies. Screw off. Kaz grumbled in response to his brother. Where's the doll? Hell if I know, Stevie grumbled. Probably under the lock and key. Stevie's eyes flashed to me. He needs a doctor, he said. He helped me pull Kaz to his feet. Can you get us out of here? I bit back a harsher retort. You're an adult too. Obviously. So the photographic vocabulary, he cut me off, was BS? He mimed an explosion. Shocker. The two of us hauled Kaz from his room and halfway down the stairs. Stevie stayed close to me, his breath in my ear. We go straight out the front door, he whispered. Do you have a car, Sienna? I froze, dazed. Kaz awkwardly sprawled over my shoulders. I remembered. What about your sister? I'm coming too, another voice sounded from downstairs. A small girl appeared, in her early 20s, dressed in jeans and a tee, with the exact same nagging tone of a certain 5-year-old. Melody Hawthorne threw a bundle of clothes at her brothers, rolling her eyes. "Get dressed," she instructed. "You two look like unfinished Ken dolls. I told you to wait until tonight." Her eyes widened when she saw blood smeared down Kaz's face. She lunged forward, bursting into tears, her child self bleeding back into her eyes. "Is Kaz okay?" She helped us carry him downstairs, sobbing the whole time. "Stay here," I told the three of them. "I'm just going to get the car, okay?" When their eyes widened, I hugged each of them. Damn, even as adults, I was undeniably attached to these little brats. "You can't just walk out of the house as adults," I told them. "I'll give a signal, and one by one you follow me to my car." Melody nodded, though Stevie looked sickly. "But the evil witch is watching," Kaz mumbled into my shoulder. "You're not listening to me. We need to find these dolls and rip off their heads." "Stay here," I reiterated. "Do not move." I opened the door slowly and darted down the driveway. The night air was cool, a relief on my flushed skin. I froze mid-run when I realized my car was gone. I darted back to the house, my stomach lurching. Before I could turn around, the Hawthorne door slammed shut. Damn it. I turned the handle, locked. "Kids," I managed to gasp out, "open the door." "Sienna," Stevie shrieked. "We didn't lock it." He paused, his voice collapsing into a sob. "I think Kaz is dying." His cry was an agonizing wail, both child and adult, so unnatural, so monstrous, I lost my breath. "Stevie," I hissed. "Stevie, is he breathing?" "I don't know," he sobbed. "There's so much blood. I can't stop it, Sienna. We need to call an ambulance." I knocked again, but my fist hit paper. The paper door, part of the paper house. The Hawthorne siblings' scream dulled to a low murmur. I stepped back, my stomach twisting. The Hawthorne home was no longer made of brick and cedar, but of pieces of paper, intricately folded and shaped as if by the hands of an artist. Slowly, the home itself began to collapse, the concrete underneath me bleeding into cardboard. I staggered backward, landing on the lawn on every blade of grass becoming paper. Scurrying back, the slow stream of paper, like a virus, was catching up to me. Lifting my head, the Hawthorne home was a single piece of paper. The paper door on the paper house where the paper dolls lived. Something sharp pricked into the back of my neck. Like ice-cold water rushing into my bloodstream, my body sagged forward. My vision blurred. My lips parted, but no sound came out. "Sienna?" Melody screamed from somewhere within the paper. The pounding on the paper door echoing, bouncing inside my skull. "Sienna, what's going on?" I wanted to answer her. I wanted to help Kaz, who was dying. Stevie, who was sobbing, half adult, half child. But so tired. Besides, weren't they just paper? I awoke 3 times. The first time I came to, I was slumped on Miss Hawthorne's shoulder. The world was swinging left and right. Left to right. The second time, I was lying on my back on concrete, staring at bloody markings, like runes, scratched into the ceiling of a dilapidated room. Miss Hawthorne's basement? A growing shadow bled over me. Miss Hawthorne, in her hands, a frantic ball of fur, held by the neck, some kind of animal. I only had to see the knife to know what was going to happen. I squeezed my eyes shut, the sharp screech of the animal collapsing into gurgles. Warm red droplets hit my cheeks, at first like rain, and I could imagine for just a moment that I was with Imogen again, riding our bikes in the summer rain as it drenched our clothes, hugging her and deciding she smelled like summer rain. A raw shriek tore from my throat, agonizing, strong enough to send my body into an arch. When it came fast, boiling hot blood drowning me, scalding my skin. Miss Hawthorne stepped closer and my vision blurred. In her scarlet, slick hands, a tiny paper doll. It has my eyes, I thought dizzily, and my mouth. My lips still parted, still screaming. The third time, I awoke groggy to fairy lights, pretty lights, blue and yellow, and the other color I couldn't grasp. Weird. It felt like I was upside down, my eyes dizzy, my thoughts plastic. I didn't notice how huge the Hawthorne living room was until I was lying on my back. So many weird corners and edges to the ceiling. Bright light filtered through the windows, and I found myself calling it pretty. A knock at the door sent me into a sitting position. Across the room, young Kaz sat alone, cross-legged and frowning at me. His siblings were nowhere to be seen. "It's all my fault," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." When I tried to speak, he turned away, and I could see the skin of his cheek torn and taped up. "Paper." I jumped up, but my legs felt weird. I started toward him, but he shook his head. "Don't come near me." "Hello," a voice slammed into my ears, and I followed a long stretch of bleeding light that collapsed into something so bright I had to cover my eyes. I heard voices whispering in the doorway. A towering figure loomed over me, grinning. A giant man whose gaze suddenly found me. "Aw." He scooped me up into his arms, swinging me around like a toy. "Hello, Sienna." He chuckled as a grasp parted my lips. "I'm Sam. I'm going to be your new babysitter." I don't really need to say much about this one. We go into it thinking, the OP's just going to babysit some kids. What could possibly go wrong? But come to find out, the mother had been restarting the kids' lives because she just kind of decided that they failed. And then, as the OP's lying on their back, staring at the ceiling, a new babysitter walks in, so the cycle can repeat itself. I thought my boyfriend was cheating on me, but it was so much worse. I lay awake, 4 a.m. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Birds were singing. I pressed my pillow over my face. "Morning," I mumbled into lavender-scented sheets. 3 days since I caught him kissing Kai. "Don't think about it." Jet groaned into his pillows in response, a streak of annoyance in his tone. Part of me wondered if he'd have that tone if Kai were in his arms. I squeezed my eyes shut, suffocating myself inside lavender until I was choking on it. I couldn't control my voice. I couldn't control the sting in my eyes or the lump in my throat. Damn it. I pressed harder until I was sure. If I continued to apply pressure, I would lose consciousness. It wasn't anger I was feeling. If I was angry, I would throw the pillow at the wall. No, I wasn't angry. I was aware I was gripping the pillow, my fingernails scrunched up in its material. I was curious. "Jet," I said again, unable to stop my tone hardening. I sensed movement before his warm arms found my waist, his lips brushing my shoulder in a kiss. He sighed, deep and heavy. Maybe it was an "I don't love you anymore" sigh. My mind drifted back to the day before, the pool party. I wasn't ashamed of showing him off to all my friends. I'd left Jet to mingle with the crowd. When I returned, 2 strawberry martinis in hand, it was just in time to see him making out with Kai Denver. The two of them swayed to the beat, bathed in neon light, their hands finding each other slowly, hesitantly, as I watched. I tried to push it out of my head, to snap back to the present, but the memory festered like curdled milk. Kai grabbed Jet's shirt collar and pulled him closer. They stood out in the crowd, Jet's thick brown hair clashing with Kai's sandy blonde. Kai's hands cupped his cheeks, eyes half-lidded, lips cracking into a teasing smile. His lips found my boyfriend's in a very slow, very real kiss, which, to my confusion, deepened. The two of them were lost in the crowd, in each other. I was sure if I hadn't made my presence known with a sharp cough, the two would have disappeared upstairs. They sprang apart the moment they saw me. Jet turned with a wide smile, a slow, spreading blush blossoming across his cheeks. Kai was slower. His hands lingered, deliberately, still clutching my boyfriend's shirt collar, even with his own girlfriend standing just a few feet away. Kai started it, I kept telling myself, but I couldn't deny Jet's grin. The way he leaned in again, hungry, almost desperate, his fingers threading, entangled in sandy blonde curls. "Stop." I exhaled into my pillow, trying to banish the image of the two of them wrapped around each other, moving in sync, twin smiles and sparkling eyes, like the two of them. Fit. Jet had looked at me like that, right? Yes, of course he had. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. "Jet," I said louder, exhaling into my pillow. "It's 4 a.m., Isabel," Jet sighed. His body moved against mine, but it felt heavy, wrong. His legs tangled around me, clammy with sweat. Maybe he was thinking about Kai. Maybe he'd gotten too excited. The pool is the perfect temperature. Do you want to stay in bed? I felt his breath tickle my neck as he rolled onto his side. I could sense the teasing smile curving on his lips. Or, you want to go for a dip? There's nothing worse than the feeling of doubt in the ones you love, the ones you give yourself to, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, always and forever. I had already rehearsed my wedding speech, and I had yet to be proposed to, but I knew it was coming. We had been dating for almost 2 years. He was my best friend, my soulmate. We'd known each other since we were kids, so it was inevitable, right? High school sweethearts? We bought our own house at 23, a cute suburban home with a white picket fence, our very own American dream. But why? I smothered the bad thoughts, rolled over, and kissed him. And he kissed back, half asleep, eyes still shut but smiling, like he loved me, like he wasn't thinking about a boy. I noticed he was slow, his hands barely cradling my face. He kissed Kai with confidence, like he was used to him, like he knew his face, every crease in his jaw, lips that somehow knew every part of him. He kissed him with a smile I'd never seen before. I waited for him to cut my cheeks, to hold me like I mattered. Jet just let out a deep exhale and buried his head in the pillow. After a full minute of staring at the clock on the wall, drowning in what-ifs, I finally sat up. Let's go out. I slipped out of bed, my legs unsteady, like I was walking on air. I dressed quickly, dragged a comb through my hair, and grabbed my phone. 4:30. I could wait an hour. When Jet didn't respond, still wrapped in blankets, I dove into our closet and grabbed a dress. Get up, I said, tossing clothes onto the bed and ignoring his groan of protest. The more awake and alert I was, the darker my thoughts grew. He was smiling in his sleep. I thought it was because of me. When there was no movement from our bed, I pulled off my sock and threw it at him. In pure Jet fashion, he buried his head in his arms. Did you just throw a sock at me? He mumbled. I ignored him. Come on, it's a beautiful day. I yanked open the curtains, flooding the room with light. The sky was a pre-dawn crystalline blue. The birds were singing their annoying songs, and my boyfriend was thinking about a boy. That is tough. When he didn't respond, again, I grew impatient, grabbing my jacket and flinging it on. Jet, get up. He sprang up, diving out of bed. Sorry. I handed him clean clothes, and he dressed quickly, throwing on a shirt and stumbling into his pants. Jet's style was my style. I chose all his clothes, his shoes, even his hairstylist. It was summer, so for him, I went with a loose tee and cargo shorts. I couldn't resist running my fingers through his hair, stretching up onto my toes to peck him on the cheek. He stood over me at 6 foot something, effortlessly flawless. Jet's smile was sleepy but cautious. His eyes followed mine, tawny brown, just the way I liked them. But it wasn't the way he looked at Kai. There was no real warmth, no spark. Instead of wrapping around me, his arms stayed at his sides. He slowly inclined his head, reminding me of when we were kids, and he would use the puppy dog eyes to swindle candy from me. Little sidebar here, I'm not exactly sure how they're going to make this story scary. I honestly have no clue at this point, but I feel like this is going to be one of those ones that kind of sneaks up on us. Anyways, let's continue. Where are we going? I handed him his shoes and he took them, uncertainly, just out. Jet followed me all the way downstairs and straight out the door into the already sweltering heat. I was glad I was wearing a dress. He slid into my car and immediately switched on the radio. Isabel, it's 4 a.m. I shrugged, starting up the car. It's a nice day. The car ride was undeniably tense. Jet stared out the window, watching early morning traffic blur past, his dark brown hair set alight by orange streaks of sunrise bleeding through the glass. He was traditionally handsome. Sculpted jawline, perfect eyes, cheekbones to die for. I was lucky to have scored someone like Jet. Somehow, I knew he was thinking about Kai, about their kiss, about how to break it to me gently. I love someone else, Isabel. His big brown eyes were screaming. Which could only mean one thing. I was sweating. My thighs clung to the leather seats. My breath was stuck in my throat. Damn. I found my voice, the words that had been suffocating me. When Jet switched off the radio and turned to me like he knew I was drowning, choking on the words tangled on my tongue. "Jet," I said, keeping my gaze on the road. "Do you remember Adam?" Jet frowned. "Adam?" It had been 1,350 days since I lost my best friend. When I was 18, I craved perfection in a partner. I had grown up at the dawn of evolving technology, the ability to transform yourself into something more. Dad died when I was 5, and Mom brought home Leo the next day, and they had been together ever since. The relationship made me believe in true perfection, the perfect human for me. I wanted the perfect jawline, the perfect hair. It didn't end with looks. I wanted a personality that shined. I didn't expect them to laugh at my jokes. I just wanted them to laugh at their own, at themselves. But I also wanted them to be pretentious and a little rude. I wanted a guy who would gladly step on me, someone ditzy and intelligent. I was yet to find him. Don't even get me started on my high school standards. I came to realize my perfect boy was in fact my best friend. Adam, the boy next door, the boy who didn't know I existed, romantically at least. I had known Adam since we were little kids, pulling faces at each other through our windows. The problem was, our parents hated each other. Adam's mom made the mistake of asking if Leo was Mom's real boyfriend, so I was given strict orders to stay away. But he kept appearing at his window. At first I was shy, hiding behind my curtains while Adam played peekaboo with his. I liked the twinkle in his eye, the way he giggled when I told him to go away. I would draw my curtains and peek through, which made him laugh. As we grew up, I found myself edging closer to my bedroom window, finding comfort in his presence. At school, we were strangers. Adam hung out with the gross boys who blew boogers out of their nose. One night after dinner, I scribbled, "Do you want to play?" on my notepad, and he surprised me with a grin. Yes. We started swapping notes and talking for hours each night after school. I started opening my window, leaning out to chat with him. One evening, he introduced me to his entire stuffed animal collection, so of course, I had to introduce him to mine. Before long, Adam grew brave. He showed up at our front door, a mess of brown curls, freckles, and scarlet cheeks. When Mom tried to shoo him away, he held up a crumpled scrap of paper, a capitalized plea in red crayon. "Please, please, please, can I play with Izzy?" When Mom didn't respond, he quickly added, "You look very pretty, Miss Kane." Mom sighed and rolled her eyes, but she was fighting a smirk. "I'm flattered, Adam." Adam's eyes lit up. He grinned, jumping up and down. "So, Izzy can play?" "Do what you want," she grumbled, turning away from us. "And tell your mother to learn some manners, young man." When Mom slammed the door on us, Adam turned to me giggling. His smile was contagious. We grew up together, and my stomach started to flutter whenever he smiled. Puberty slammed into me. I got my first period, and boys suddenly didn't seem that gross anymore. I started to feel breathless and maybe a little nauseous when we lay on the grass watching clouds. We were 14 when Adam had a growth spurt. His freckles became more prominent, which I hated, but he was also getting love letters from girls in our class. I had sweaty palms and flushed cheeks, and I couldn't understand why talking to Adam had become so much harder. I got tongue-tied and tripped over my words, my face burning. I had a crush. A gut-churning, butterfly-inducing, world-ending crush on the boy next door. That realization hit when we were 16, after I had already been on my fair share of dates. But none of them were with Adam, who was just that perfection I craved. I didn't want a boy like him. I wanted him. One night, I was watching Adam change through my window. I didn't even realize I was peeking. It was a mistake. That's what I told myself, at least. I totally didn't mean to see him. When he looked directly at me, I ducked. Busted. I tried to play it cool, jumping to my feet and saying, "Oh, I dropped my hairbrush." He was already grinning, mouthing, "Nice try." I pretended not to see another shadow behind him, who moved closer, wrapping their arms around his neck, making him laugh. The two of them tumbled onto his bed. Adam dived to his feet and drew the curtains before I could see anything. I left it to my imagination, aware of prickling heat rising in my cheeks. I pulled my own curtain shut, my heart pounding, my stomach twisting. The boy next door was taken. On his 20th birthday, he had a party, but nobody came. While half of our year was celebrating graduation, others were numb with terror. Instead, the two of us ate cake and drank beers and watched clouds like we were kids again. Like we could hold on to our youth in one perfect afternoon. I sat on the edge of his pool, dangling my feet in the crystal water, lapping over my toes. I'd received my letter the day before. I let it sit in my bedroom for 2 hours while I paced up and down the stairs, then heaved up my breakfast. Eventually, when I couldn't take it anymore, when my skin was crawling, I tore it open, read a single word, and broke into Mom's wine cabinet, polishing off 3 bottles. I didn't hold the same hope for the boy next door. Adam lounged on a pool float, head bowed, a beer pressed to his lips. That exact same envelope crumpled in his trembling hands. He was already drunk, slightly off kilter. I pretended not to see the self-inflicted scar cutting through his eye. The last thing Adam wanted was to be perfect. "What do you think it says, Izzy?" He turned, slurring a little. I didn't look up from the surface of the pool, watching the last streaks of sunlight dance across the glittering blue as the sky faded into diffused twilight. The boy next door was taken, and my chest ached. It was getting harder to breathe around him, like my lungs were starved of oxygen. If this was what falling in love was, I didn't want it. It was agonizing, cruel. It was wrong to feel like this about some stupid boy. I wanted perfect, and Adam wasn't. So why was I swallowing razor blades when I was with him? A never-ending push and pull between us. Adam was a virus burning through my blood, intoxicating my thoughts with only him. Telling him my feelings would be selfish. Telling him would ruin what we had. But keeping my feelings from him was just ripping my heart to shreds. "Just open it," I said, kicking my legs. He did, tearing into it. I ducked my head, squeezing my eyes shut. Adam didn't speak for a long time. It was long enough for me to risk glancing under my lashes. Something in my gut flipped. He was trying so hard to hide it, but I could see the way his jaw clenched, the glassiness in his eyes. Crying, but not just crying. I saw the lump in his throat, the curl of his lip, that he was trying to be angry. He wasn't angry. He was terrified. Adam didn't have to say it. I already knew what it said. I watched him stare down at his fate before he scoffed, screwed it up, and dumped the letter in the water. "Rejected," he said with a grin, wading to the side of the pool and pulling himself out. He was shaking, yet still wearing that plastic smile. "I guess I'm in the clear." "Yeah," I said, hating myself for sounding uninterested, uncaring, when in reality, I think we were both fracturing. I was ashamed of how my gaze lingered where it shouldn't, on the sculpted muscles of his back, the way wet strands of hair stuck to his forehead and fell into the light green eyes. There was no way Adam McIntyre had been rejected, but still, I nodded and smiled, ignoring the way he kept swiping at raw eyes, muttering, "I think I'm allergic to something in the pool." "I'm going to grab another beer," Adam said, still putting on a show, still hiding behind a facade he knew I could see right through. He grabbed his phone from the patio, frowning at the screen. "Want one?" I saluted him with my soda. "I'm good." There was one thing Adam was terrible at, lying. He fidgeted on his feet, unable to meet my eyes. When I heard the wet slap of his footsteps disappear inside the house, I slipped into the water and fished out the letter. It was barely legible, the ink already bleeding onto my hands. But all I really needed to see was the beginning. For the attention of Mr. Adam McIntyre, congratulations. You have been selected as a suitable candidate for Conversion Class B as part of AMOR, Artificial Matchmaking and Optimization Registry. Following biometric, psychological, and appearance evaluations, you have been awarded a compatibility score of 9. Please report to your local AMOR processing center by 0900 hours on Monday, June 24th for reconstruction. Failure to do so will have consequences. Your family will be compensated. You are strictly forbidden to engage in the following, henceforth before reconstruction: smoking, drug use, overeating, and sexual activity. Do not self-inflict injuries on your body. This includes brain-altering substances. These will not pardon you. We thank you for your contribution to a more unified future. From the Central Placement Authority Office of Social Alignment and Trust. Unity, Mr. McIntyre, begins with you. By the time I was finished skimming the letter, my heart was in my throat. I found Adam in his parents' basement, eyes squeezed shut, a knife to the curve of his throat. But he wasn't stupid. The letter was very clear. I couldn't do anything but wrap my arms around him. He dropped the knife, letting it hit the floor. Go away. Adam's voice was shaky, a warning, but I was used to his mood swings. I didn't let go, clinging to him. At first, he was stiff, arms hanging useless at his sides. Then, slowly, something in him broke. He leaned into me, burying his face in my shoulder. Bit by bit, the boy next door began to unravel. Damn it, he whispered, his words splintering into a sob. I held him as he shattered, sobbing and screaming, until his cries collapsed into broken whimpers. He clung to me like I was an anchor, and I felt helpless. Hopeless that I couldn't help him. I'm supposed to go to college, and I'm not going? Do you hear me? I'm not letting them do this to me. His laugh caught in his throat. Tears soaked my shoulder, warm, somehow comforting, and so human I almost let myself break too. I'll get the hell out of here, he whispered, his lips brushing my ear. An involuntary shiver ran down my spine. I've heard of what they do in those places. I've seen the videos. And your mom's boyfriend. He trailed off, but I knew what he was going to say. I did hear kids manage to escape. Adam's breath was warm. There's a European rebel group fighting for us, and if we can somehow get into Canada. Adam, I spoke softly, let's not talk about it tonight. I allowed myself to smile. It's your birthday. When he finally sank to the floor, curling his knees to his chest, I sank down with him. He lit a cigarette with a sigh. I rested my head on his. We sat in peaceful silence. I liked the feeling of his head resting in the crook of my shoulder. So, he murmured, taking a drag of the cigarette, what was your score? I ignored his question for a moment, focusing on the ignition of orange between his fingers. Are you even inhaling that? He groaned, tipping his head back, his gaze straight on the ceiling. I'm trying to. Adam passed me the cigarette, and I took a slow, uncertain pull. I immediately choked, coughing up smoke. Oh God, I waggled my tongue, the sticky taste of nicotine glued to my mouth. I handed it back, and he chuckled. We passed it back and forth for a while, neither of us inhaling, for both of us faking it. After all, that's what we did with candy cigarettes as kids. Growing up sucks. I scored an 8, I said to his earlier question. His expression crumbled, smile fading. Sounds like they don't find you attractive. I shoved him playfully, but he was right. I was assessed as average at an 8. According to my letter, my intelligence and nose brought me down from an 8.5. I silently thanked my mother and father's average genes. But that didn't stop the self-hatred, the constant need to make myself desirable. Jay was accepted too, Adam said softly, and my heart fluttered. He avoided my gaze. I'm not letting them do this to him. So, over the next few weeks, he planned. On the morning of his summons, Adam crawled through my bedroom window at 6 a.m. He was armed with his father's gun tucked into his belt, a backpack filled with essentials, and dyed black hair poking out from beneath his hooded sweatshirt. Get up, he whispered. When I tried to bury myself in my pillows, he yanked them away and tugged me out of bed. We have an hour until we're meeting Noah, he said hurriedly. So we need to go right now. Pack enough clothes, dump your phone. I sat up, swiping sleep from my eyes. Noah? He nodded, already packing my things into my bag. He's a survivor. Noah is driving us and some others to the border, and then we're getting a boat. He threw my backpack at me. Get dressed, now. While I tried to process his words, Adam grabbed my laptop. You need to dump this too, he hissed. You can't leave a trail. Adam moved to my drawers, grabbing sanitary towels and spare cash and stuffing them into my backpack. You'll need these. He moved to my sock drawer, pulling out underwear. Oh, and these too. Adam, I said. I had a bad feeling Operation Move to Canada was doomed to fail. He didn't turn to look at me, grasping fistfuls of my socks. I know it's a long shot, he whispered, but it's mine. I didn't know his plan, but a plan was enough. I was already prepared to follow him. Slipping out of bed, I joined him, snatching my panties out of his hands. His cheeks glowed crimson, but he was smiling. Adam flung up his hands. Sorry. I threw a sock at him, and he retreated with a smirk. Step away from the underwear drawer, I said. Stepping away, he muttered, practically diving into my closet. Adam and I packed everything we could, and I wrote my mom a note only she would read. We dumped our phones in a neighbor's pool and jumped into Adam's car. Jay, his boyfriend, sat in the back. Serena, a gray-eyed girl, also selected, squeezed next to him, blonde curls falling in willowy golden locks in her face. She had a natural kind of beauty, the type that was marketable, sellable. Jay's glittering smile and sculpted jawline made him irresistible. Adam's charm was what sold him. His eyes were his only flaw. I preferred brown. Serena and Jay were strong 9s for their looks. Adam's personality bumped up my own personal rating to 9.5. I realized, a sick feeling coiling in my gut, that I was among pretty corpses. I was the only average one, the only one allowed to live past 18. I had known about AMOR since I was a kid. Back then, it was a Korea-owned technology company, Morphosis, that was bought by Apple. I remembered the commercials, constant interruptions about every 5 minutes, promising perfection through skincare products and eventually body modification. Instead of being raised on shows like Bluey, I was repeatedly told that perfection was the only way forward. I remembered the colors invading my screen, pastel pink and light blue. Girls and boys sculpted like mannequins, dressed in traditional black and white, while an AI voice over-repeated the same thing. No flaws, only beauty. Find your one, who you're fated to be with. Be beautiful. Be you. Press X for a full consultation. With birth rates rapidly declining and billionaires worrying about future labor shortages, women were encouraged to have children. But according to my mother, there was no support, no financial aid, not even a stable income to raise a child. So, women rebelled by refusing to have children, and men retaliated by treating women as the second class. The government responded by punishing both and enforcing a so-called stable future. Through AMOR, the American government passed a federal law mandating that every 20-year-old who met the beauty standard must surrender themselves to reconstruction, ensuring perfect partners to birth perfect children. As I grew up, I started noticing them in public. Flawless men and women on the streets, like living Barbie dolls. I was afraid of them until Dad died and Mom brought one home. His name was Leo. He was purely a rebound. By the time I reached high school, the naturally attractive kids were already destroying themselves to avoid being selected for reconstruction. I was a freshman when a senior boy jumped off the roof. Acceptance letters still crumpled in his hand. Now, my best friend was expected to willingly walk inside a slaughterhouse. Adam was resilient, and that's what I loved about him. He wasn't going to surrender his body, his soul, for someone else's satisfaction. I was surprised that we didn't get pulled over, though Adam was careful. Serena came out of her shell, explaining she had a girlfriend back home who was planning to follow her to Canada. The atmosphere began to lighten, and by the time we were en route to the border, I was swapping socials with Serena, the two of us planning where we were going to go to college, while Jay and Adam playfully argued over which choice of radio station. It felt like we were on a road trip, just 4 friends hanging out, until Adam's phone rang. I met his frightened gaze, because he didn't have a phone. I watched him dump it in a jacuzzi. Grab the wheel, he told Jay, panicking, reaching for his backpack. He didn't find his phone, instead, a small device wrapped in his clothes. Adam held it up, pinched between his fingers, his eyes widening. Damn it. Adam McIntyre, Serena Eastbrook, Jay Wednesday. The flat robotic drawl sliced through the silence, making me jump. Serena screamed, slamming her hands over her ears. Behind us, 2 black vans swerved into position, blocking the road. By the order of the AMOR division, you have been selected for reconstruction following your assessment. Adam's knuckles whitened around the wheel. He slammed the car into reverse, only for a third van to crash into us from behind, jerking the vehicle forward. I was flung forwards, snapped back my belt. "You are surrounded. Exit the vehicle now or we will extract you by force." "Get out," Adam's voice croaked into a cry. He was shaking, grabbing his pack, then his gun from the glove compartment, stuffing it in his jeans. "Get out now." He pointed toward a clearing that led into the trees. "Over there," he said. "If we lose them and continue through the trees, we can find another car and keep going north." Adam pulled a crumpled map from his pocket. "We're meeting Noah here." When none of us moved, he twisted to face us, his eyes wild. "Go, now!" Serena and Jay were the first to run, sneaking out of the back. Ahead of us, armed soldiers were inspecting cars. I crawled out of the passenger seat as Adam cracked open the driver's side. I dropped into a crouch, following his figure as he darted down the road, rolled under a stalling car, and then burst into a sprint. I watched my best friend run for his life, and something snapped inside me, freezing me in place. Twisted around, I saw more soldiers swarming from the black vehicle, scanning for Adam and the others. "Izzy," Adam hissed, gesturing me over. "Come on." I nodded and broke into a run, copying him. I dropped into a crawl, scooted under another car, and threw myself toward the clearing. When I reached him, he grabbed my hand, but before he could pull me forward, I tugged away. And before I could stop myself, before I could swallow the poison rising in my throat, I told him I loved him, that I had always loved him. Adam was perfect, and he was mine. It was fate. Just like those stupid commercials, Adam was my fate. He was perfection, and he was meant to be with me. Adam's expression softened for a moment. "Izzy, you know I'm—" He swallowed, squeezing his eyes shut. "We're best friends," he said, his voice cracking. "Izzy, you know we are. You're, confused." I found my voice. "Confused?" "Well, yeah," he said, his gaze flicking behind me. "Come on, let's go." "I'm not confused," I said. "You don't love me, dude." He surprised me with a laugh. Adam gently grabbed my shoulders, and I almost tipped into his embrace. His eyes found mine, forcing me to look at him, forcing me to truly take all of him in. "Izzy, you love the idea of me." Something sour crept up my throat, and I found myself laughing. "Sure." I didn't give him a chance to respond. I stepped back off again, off kilter, my head spinning, and the way his eyes suddenly widened, jaw clenching, he knew exactly what I was going to do. He pulled out his father's gun, which had no bullets. Adam had told me that himself. Still, he pointed the gun, finding the perfect trajectory between my eyes, his finger trembling. I held my breath and screamed, "He's over here!" I watched his eyes hollow, filling with pain. He staggered back just as gunshots sounded. "Izzy, what the hell are you—" "He's over here," I repeated, stepping back, my legs threatening to collapse beneath me. "He's here!" I screamed it until my throat was raw, until I was on my knees and he was tackled to the ground, forced onto his stomach, his cries muffled, hands pinned behind him. When he screamed, a boot slammed down on his neck, shoving his face into the dirt. I saw his eyes. I saw his lips twist into a snarl. "You didn't," he kept whispering, choking on laughter that burst into sobs as he was violently dragged to his feet. His eyes didn't even find me. They were too afraid to. "You didn't." Adam said it again and again, his voice splitting through my skull. "Tell me you didn't, Izzy. Tell me you didn't." I replayed Adam's words in my head as they dragged him away and shoved him into the back of a black van which would take him to his death. When the door slammed, I staggered back, regaining my breath, regaining my thoughts. What did I just do? While part of me forced my body forward to try and save him, the rest of me was paralyzed. Serena and Jay were captured with him. Serena screamed at me, her wails echoing in my skull like ocean waves, fading in and out. But I barely registered her. I could still hear Adam. "Tell me you didn't love me." I could still hear his screams, pleading with me, like he was trying to convince himself. "Izzy, you didn't love me, right? You didn't love me." His words followed me all the way home, where my mother was still waiting. I waited 2 full weeks until I was sure enough time had passed. I drove to the AMOR center, and walking inside, I felt sick to my stomach. I found myself entranced by hundreds, maybe thousands, of desirable partners displayed on giant human-sized TVs. I stumbled through the women's section first. Serena was displayed with a seductive smirk, wearing a two-piece bikini, her skin lighter, eyes an unnatural piercing blue. Her breasts were exaggerated, purposely sticking from lingerie. She was a human Barbie doll. Beach Babe was what described her. "Hello, welcome to AMOR. Is there anything I can help you with?" The male attendant in front of me, wearing a navy tie, was one of them. He too was sculpted, too smiley. I nodded. "I'm looking for a boyfriend," I said. "Can I see the new releases?" His smile widened. "Oh, of course. Are you not interested in our female releases?" I didn't have the heart to look at Serena. Her original self still stung my eyes. "I'm okay." He led me through automatic doors into another room. It was darker, lit up in a pale white glow. I noticed some of the displays were still black. A few were still being set up. I found him on aisle 3. He towered over the others. Adam, or the thing with my best friend's face, was perfect. His face had been shaved down, his nose sculpted. Adam's original curls were back, his eyes colored a deep, velvety brown, which brought out his smile. Enemy to a lover was Adam's selling hook. "Why don't you introduce me to your parents? I promise I'll be a good boy." The attendant stood beside me, still grinning. "If you're interested in purchasing this one today, I'd advise against it," he said. "These boyfriends were only processed a few days ago. So they're still a little," he shrugged. "Well, reconstruction can be traumatizing for the brain. I suggest waiting a week for the product to adjust." "I'll take him," I said, my eyes glued to my best friend's vacant, soulless stare. His wide, glittering grin. The attendant didn't argue. He led me to the checkout counter. I signed some paperwork, handed over my card, and before I knew what was happening, Adam was being led out to meet me. He was dressed in a white dress shirt and pants. No freckles this time, no flaws, just pure perfection. I took his hand, and he reacted immediately, the way Adam never had. I could pretend it was our first meeting. Love at first sight, his hands cupped to my cheeks, his lips breaking into a grin. "Hello," he said. His voice was deeper, perfectly fitting his profile. "What's your name? I'm Unit 13446. Would you like to give me a different name? Please feel free to name me, and our lifetime bond will begin." "Isabel," I said, my voice shuddering. "My name is Isabel." "Isabel," he repeated with a smile. "I like your name." I found myself smiling too, overwhelmed. "Your name," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "Your name is Jet." "Isabel?" Jet's voice pulled me back to the present. I didn't realize I was crying. My boyfriend's expression was already frantic. In front of us stood a giant, looming glass building. AMOR, specifically the help center. I noticed Jet was stiff in his seat. "Isabel," he repeated as I gently pulled him from the car. "Why are we here?" I didn't reply, striding through the welcome doors. I kept a tight grip on his wrist. At the front desk, a nurse greeted me, her eyes flicking to Jet. I saw the way she looked at him, eyes widening, cheeks blooming red. "This is my boyfriend Jet," I said, snapping her out of it. "I think he's cheating." The nurse nodded, quickly slipping back into a professional. "That sounds like a fault," she said, typing something into her laptop. "Can you tell me his registration number?" Jet's eyes widened. "Isabel, I don't understand." "Shut up, Jet," I said, and he complied, closing his mouth. I focused on the nurse. "Unit 13446. She pointed to a room ahead. "Take a step in there," she said. "It looks like your boyfriend bot is malfunctioning." The doctor was my mom's age, with large eyes and bottle cap glasses. He led Jet to a bed and gently sat him down. I took the seat opposite, watching the doctor take his blood first, then check his heartbeat. He gave a pleased nod. "His vitals seem to be fine," he said. "I'll take a look at the brain." The words bubbled in my mouth, poisonous and painful, but they were mine. "Can you make him forget about a certain person?" I asked as the nurse hooked him up to a machine. I thought back to Kai, the way he made my boyfriend smile for real, not a plastic smile, not a programmed smile. He smiled the way he did when we were kids. The way he smiled at Jay when they first met. Jet was limp, letting the doctor stick needles into his skin. He squirmed when the doctor's fingers found the back of his head. "I only want him to look at me," I whispered. "I want you to erase everyone else." "No," Jet surprised me with a cry, his eyes widening. "No, I—" "Stop talking," the doctor scolded, and Jet's mouth clamped shut. He drew back before pulling on gloves. "That is not supposed to happen," he hummed. He retrieved a bone saw, dragging spinning blades across Jet's head. When the body was reconstructed, the skull was replaced with an artificial one to hold the brain and allow for modifications when necessary, the doctor explained. His hands were slick with scarlet, red pooling down his arm. I noticed Jet was gritting his teeth, trembling, gripping the bed, but he wasn't supposed to feel it. The doctor noticed too. He studied my boyfriend's expression and clapped his hands in front of Jet, but Jet didn't blink. "What is its name?" the doctor asked me. "Jet." He shook his head. "No, before reconstruction." I swallowed. "I don't know." I lied. He sighed, prodding Jet's right eye. This time he didn't flinch. "Boyfriend bots very rarely show emotion toward anyone but their owner," he said. "That is, of course, unless the former consciousness has taken over." He turned to me. The organic body may have remembered its past self, and possibly even a past loved one. "Kai is a boyfriend bot," I said. "He's my friend's." He nodded, slipped on a pair of gloves, and reached deep into Jet's skull. "I will do a simple reset," he said. With practiced precision, he extracted a tiny metal chip, snapped it clean in two, and replaced it with a fresh one. Jet's eyes flew open in protest, flashing bright, hypnotizing green. His mouth parted like he was about to scream. Then his eyes rolled back in his head and his mouth closed shut. "I've erased the unit's memories," the doctor said calmly, unhooking Jet from the machine. When my boyfriend fell forward, his body limp and wrong, the doctor caught him, helping him into a sitting position. "However, I recommend requesting a full reinstall. I've fixed the problem for now, but if the organic consciousness remembers itself, there's nothing I can do but recommend a reset." The doctor helped Jet to his feet. "Did you buy him fresh?" I nodded. "I bought him brand new." "Ah," the doctor's eyes darkened. "It's a common problem. If units aren't given the time to adjust to the reconstructed body, sometimes the organic brain can remember who it was and can reawaken." His smile was too big. "But don't worry, just bring him here for a reset." I felt like I was floating. I lifted Jet to his shaky feet and led him out of the hospital. He stumbled twice, managing to walk on his own, though his legs were shaky. In the car, I caught his hand twitching, his eyes flickering. Slow drips of red pooled from his nose. "Jet?" I asked shakily. "Who are you in love with?" He didn't respond for a moment. "I love him," he spat through his teeth, his tone twisting. "I love Jay. Adam." I scooted back, my heart in my throat. Adam was still in there. For a second, we both sat still, silent. There were only his strained breaths. Then he slowly raised his fist and slammed it into his temple. I screamed, and he did it again. A river of scarlet now seeping from his nose. A third time, and he was screaming, a raw, painful wail erupting from his mouth. "Izzy." Adam's voice was as broken as it was the day I let him get dragged away and turned into my fantasy. A fantasy who loved me. His half-lidded eyes found mine, glassy and so human. A wave of shame slammed into me. What the hell did you do to me?
This story was so good, and it really creeped me out. This author, Trash Tia, I only have good things to say about them. Because, I mean, come on, that twist was insane. This story really starts out sounding like it's going to be a relationship drama, but it turns out that Jet was actually Adam. This one spends so long making you focus on the cheating that you don't realize that it's setting up for a very big reveal at the end. The real horror isn't the affair, it's what Isabel did to Adam.
This one's also from r/scary stories from user Ozzy_Zingo. My family receives letters one day before we die. Today I got mine. People die all the time. It's nature. Ours are just extremely detailed on a piece of paper we receive a day before we die. Although it sounds very macabre, we live normal lives. All of our working family members have stable, normal jobs. Kids have a good childhood. No one else knows about our family's tradition, and my parents, as well as theirs before them, are very adamant on keeping it that way. Exceptions apply, of course, otherwise we wouldn't be a family. People who are married into the family are not affected by our tradition. They don't receive any letters and live a normal life by all standards. Not always, at least. My grandma got hers. Never seen my grandpa that angry before. And my dad also got his. I've never been so angry before. But the kids in our family will receive letters nonetheless. They will all die eventually, and it will be written for them. Anyhow, today I got mine. I'm 28 years old, by the way. When I woke up this morning, I dreaded the fact that there will be a tomorrow. That I have to wake up, go to work, get home, do it all over again, until the day I die. Now, I dread the fact there will be no tomorrow because I will die, and it's written in the letter sitting beside me. I guess I should go into detail about the letters themselves, so long as you read yours when you get it. You will die in a somewhat normal way. Not particularly painful, not particularly awful. My grandpa got his, read it, and died of a heart attack in his sleep. He was 87 when he died. He had a good life. What I'm trying to say is that, despite the letters describing your death, most of us have normal deaths. I've been told about the letters throughout my entire life, that no matter how old I am, I might receive one, and then I will die the next day. Thanks for ruining the first day of school, Mom and Dad. Nothing says existential dread as much as getting your mail thinking you might die the next day. But that's how life is for us. No one knows how it started, why it won't end. Just that there's a common denominator and a set of rules. The letters in question are a single piece of paper inside a white envelope with a name written on the front. There's no mailman, they just appear in the mailbox or fall through the mail slot one day. It's addressed to whoever's name is written on the front, and by no means whatsoever should you read someone else's letter. Even people outside of my family's blood should never read someone else's letter. Terrible things happen to you. You will receive your letter immediately after reading someone else's, and you won't have a nice death. You will have a slow, painful one. You'd wish you had gotten the death you read when reading about someone else's. Amongst some other rules, this one is the most enforced one. My cousin got tackled by my grandpa for almost opening my grandma's letter. He was mean anyways, so I didn't care. Mom and Dad drilled this rule into the back of me and my siblings' heads, far more times than I can count, and they didn't shy away from using examples. A few decades back, my mom and her siblings were sitting around the kitchen table with their parents, eating and talking about how their day in school was. Then there was a single knock on the door, followed by a letter hitting the soft carpet. It was addressed to Jake, my mom's twin brother. He was 10. Her parents told him to go get it, open it, and read it to himself. He did, and started to cry. Despite the urge to read the letter, all of them comforted him and prepared him for the day to come by giving him the best last day that they ever could. Except my mom's older sister. For whatever bratty reason, she decided that she would read the letter. While my grandpa ordered pizza and my grandma started baking her son's favorite cookies, my mom and her sister were ordered to take care of their brother for the moment. As they were sitting around the floor, watching Jake's favorite TV show, my mom's sister leaned towards him and whispered, "What did the letter say?" Jake turned red and his eyes began to water as my mom shot her sister a concerning look. "We're not supposed to know," she said. "So?" "Stephanie, stop," my mom said as she stood up. Although she was very young, she had a sense of the situation and went to the kitchen table to grab the letter before her sister could get her hands on it. The letter was gone. Her father had just returned with the pizzas when my mom asked where the letter was. He said that he told Stephanie to grab it and go put it in David's room. My mom turned around to see Stephanie standing up. She held the letter in her hand. She proudly proclaimed, "I know how David dies." Apparently, as soon as she said that, a loud crash emerged from the kitchen, followed by my grandma's loud scream. The kitchen window was shattered and pieces of glass covered every corner of the room. My grandma was bleeding from the top of her eyebrow. A thick shard of glass had lodged itself under her skin as the window shattered. On the kitchen floor, covered in blood, was a letter addressed to my mom's sister. No one knew what to do. Their parents were fuming, and my mom's sister panicked. frantically begging her for forgiveness. My grandpa forced her to sit there in the kitchen until she read it. My grandma was crying, begging my grandpa to let her go. My mom and her brother struggled to understand what was happening, but they all knew she had to open the letter and read it, and she eventually did. She cried the whole time, but stopped after finishing the letter. She just went silent for the rest of the evening. The despair in her eyes when she looked at my mom was a sight she would never forget. My mom said that the smell of freshly baked cookies had never felt so wrong before. My mom's brother went to sleep that night and never woke up. My mom's sister went to sleep that night and was never found again. The only thing left of her sister was a pair of eyes sitting on the windowsill. They were staring towards the branches hanging just outside. I can't remember if they even bothered calling the cops. Trying to explain everything without showing the letters would probably be hard. But I don't even think they went searching for her. She knew her sister had done wrong, but she was still her sister, still her family. One day, when she was playing outside by herself, she found bloody footsteps leading into the forest. She followed them. It was already late, and soon the sun disappeared and the warmth of the day had turned into the cold of the night. The tree branches turned into arms and began reaching for her, the roots covering the ground bit by her feet with every step she took. But she kept following the footsteps. Eventually, she stopped because the footsteps had stopped, but she didn't look up. She didn't have to. Her sister's nightgown shined against the moonlight in the corner of my mom's eyes. She was too scared to move, but once she felt the warm embrace of her sister's hug, she finally dared to move her body. She wrapped her arms around her sister. She was alive. She was here. She was coming home. My mom buried her face against her sister's stomach. It was wet. She moved her head back. Red, deep, wet red covered her sister's clothes. She looked up. 2 streaks of dark blood ran from her sister's empty eye sockets alongside her body, down to her feet. She smiled. My mom felt the deceit of her sister's arms wrapped around her and managed to break free. She ran as fast as she could, but she didn't know where. She had lost the trail. She went further and further into the dark, hostile forest. She said she can't remember how far she had gone or how long she was out there, just that she kept going, because she could hear her sister behind her, and she was getting closer. She crashed against the bushes, scraping her arms and knees. A large thorn bush suddenly covered her path, but she dove forward. Her sister's cries filling the air was the last thing she remembered before she woke up. She was lying on the backyard of their house, the sun slowly rising and forcing its way into her eyelids. She got up, went inside the house, into her room, and went to sleep. She woke up again to the scream of her mother, who was standing beside her. My mom was covered from head to toe in thick thorns, each burrowing and piercing her skin. Her parents had searched for her all night. They spent the whole day removing each thorn. My mom said this was the only time she ever saw my grandpa cry. She told them everything. My grandpa refused to believe her. She never forgave him for that. Hearing that story when you're 7 years old at your cousin's birthday party really leaves a mark. That mark has kept me from reading others' letters though, so thanks I guess. Our second rule is that you should never destroy or throw away your own or someone else's letter before or after they've died. In comparison to our other rules, this one doesn't have horrible consequences. It's more of a social aspect and, this happened, therefore they did this. Oh, he died in a slightly more horrible car crash? Must have been disrespectful against someone's letter. Oh, she didn't die immediately when the gun went off? Must have tried to destroy her own letter. And no matter how many times you destroy it or try to throw it away, the letter will just reappear. Bottom line is, respect your letter and respect others. Imagine you're staying at your grandpa's house and you're going to the movies for the first time, and before leaving, he pulls you aside and tells you you're your family's second rule. Completely ruins a movie. Our family's a goddamn shit show sometimes. Another rule is that you must read your letter once you receive it. Otherwise, you won't have such a nice death either. Other than knowing you're going to die, the worst part about the letters is reading about it. Something about a detailed description about your own death isn't that alluring to people. So sometimes they don't. A few years back, my grandpa's brother and his wife were visiting their winter cabin up north. They were celebrating 40 years of marriage. Late that evening, after getting home from a restaurant, the letter addressed to my grandpa's brother was sitting on the living room couch. Not feeling like bumming out one of the happiest days of his life, he decided not to read it, despite his wife's pleas. I guess he felt like he had lived a long and happy life and he didn't want to ruin his last day alive for himself. Who can blame him, really? After going to bed, his wife woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of what she would explain as furniture scraping against the floor. She was about to get up and investigate when the sound stopped, so she just went back to bed and figured it was the old wooden house complaining about the weather. She didn't think about checking in on her husband, who wasn't lying next to her anymore. When she woke up and noticed he was gone, she went to the living room and screamed. The scene before her was worse than you could ever imagine. Her husband was nailed to the roof by his feet, hanging upside down with his scraped fingertips barely touching the floor. Blood ran down along his naked body from various holes on random spots and formed a pool of blood on the floor below his head. Thick shards of wood pierced his fingernails and went out the top of his fingers. His eyes were wide open. They stared at the door leading to the bedroom. After a thorough investigation by officials that seemingly led to nothing other than suspicion of foul play from the wife, everything was cleaned up, and sure enough, significant amounts of floor were missing from just around where he had hung. It looked like he had tried to claw his way towards the door. Did he try to reach his wife? Why couldn't she hear him? No one knew, no one asked, and no one dared to read his letter. All because he didn't read his letter. But what if his death was just exactly that? He still died in that awful way. Would it have mattered if he read the letter? Would he have just been bummed about becoming a human piñata and definitely had his last day alive ruined for him? Am I really supposed to believe that if he had read the damn letter, he would have died of a heart attack in his sleep or something? So as far as family traditions go, mine has a curse. My family's attempt at labeling our curse as a tradition and constantly reminding me of it throughout my entire life has only served as a source of chronic anxiety on my behalf. I can't really blame them though. They just want a somewhat normal life for us, and we have to follow the rules to have that. So there's only one obvious way to escape it. Stop making kids. But not everyone feels that way, so the curse lives on. I've never really wanted kids. I wouldn't want to put them through what I've had to go through, and I won't have to worry anymore. My entire life, I've feared the day I will receive my letter, but for once, I feel calm. I realize that there's nothing left to do. Nothing left to live for. I can do whatever I want. This has gotten me somewhat curious. My letter is sitting right beside me now. I haven't opened it yet. I'm not sure if I intend to, but it got me thinking. Since it's my last day alive, I don't have much to live for right now, and our curse is sure to kill me anyways. What would happen if I read someone's letter after they died? This brings me to our family's fourth rule. Never read someone's letter after they've died. It's their letter and their letter only, even in death. But I've never heard of any family member actually doing it. I've never asked either, but the other rules and their consequences have been explained to me in detail since I gained consciousness. This is due partly to my grandpa and his predecessors. After someone has died, we put their letter in the chest. It's an old black wooden casket that stores all of our family's letters. It's guarded with a single key and belongs to the oldest son, currently alive in the family. My dad just so happened to pass away a few months back. He had a tumor in his brain that was slowly eating away at him. I visited him one day and was greeted with a letter on the nightstand beside his bed. He was far gone in the head, but I wasn't prepared that he would have forgotten about our curse. As I sat down next to him and explained that he had to read his letter, he asked why. I told him it was a love letter from his wife. Can you imagine his joy and the way his eyes lit up when he said, "I have a wife"? He opened the letter, read it, looked at me with seething anger, and asked why I would do this to him. I couldn't help but cry. He told me to leave, and he said he never wanted to see me again. My own dad. I know I was trying to save him from an unimaginable death, but I couldn't help but to feel ashamed for putting him through that. That's when I swore to never have kids. I wasn't going to put my own kids through something like that. So eventually, I got the key from my dad's belongings. He had left it to me in his will. Now that I'm going to die, I have to give it to my brother. He already has kids. He's had a good life. He'll be inheriting the key to our family's secrets, but not after I've uncovered them first. The chest is currently sitting at my grandpa's house, which my dad inherited. Now it's empty. Right now, I'm sitting in the kitchen I used to run around in when I was a little kid, whenever me and my siblings visited our grandparents. I swear, I only ever saw my grandpa happy when he was looking through his mail. I managed to pull down the chest from the attic. It took me long enough. It's heavy as shit. I opened it up to find at least 100 letters. There's so many generations of my family inside a single box. It will be impossible to find the oldest one, if there even is, and there's no dates on these. Even stranger, they all looked the same. None of them looked older than the other. Some of them were covered with dark spots, looking elegantly placed so as to not cover up its respective name. But other than that, they all looked brand new. No discoloring of the paper, all sporting a beautiful paper white. It took some digging, but so far I'm pretty sure I found my grandma's, my mom's siblings, my grandpa's brothers, and my dad's. I've already read them all. I know I shouldn't have read them, but I had to know. I'm reading mine. I'm sure I'll find the answer I've been looking for there, but I'm not sure I want to know anymore. I'll transcribe the letters here in the order I read them. Read at your own risk. My grandma's letter. Janine. Nothing but a righteous woman. You have lived your life to the fullest of your capabilities. I have watched you for long. So pure of heart. Stop while you still can. You deserve nothing short of a warm embrace. You will go to sleep tonight, and you won't wake up. You will live on in your next life, and you will be happy. I'll make sure you're happy, my child. My grandpa's letter. Dave, you're a strong man. You would do anything to keep your family safe. Such a shame about the tragedy that befell your daughter. I never wish for my children to leave their life in such a painful matter. I won't forgive you. I will punish you. But you did what you could. She got what she deserved. You will meet your wife and your son soon, but I'll keep your daughter. She belongs to me. My mom's brother's letter. Jake, such a beautiful boy. You had your whole life ahead of you. You wanted to become an astronaut. So pure and innocent. Unlike your sister, she will read this because she is selfish, because she thinks she deserves more. You will go to sleep, and you will have a beautiful dream that goes on forever. Your sister will walk out into the forest. She will die a slow and painful death for what she's done. I must punish my children. She deserves it. My mom's sister's letter. Stephanie. There are those whose teeth are swords, whose fangs are knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, the needy from mankind. My child, you have become vile, your soul tainted, your eyes prey on weakness now, but you are young and ignorant. You deserve everything that's coming for you. I've set you on the righteous path, but rest assured, you will not be safe, for I won't be the one collecting you. My grandpa's brother's letter. John, you've been a good man your whole life. Why waste it on such an unimportant cause? What made you think you were entitled to something more than others? You're going to read this because you wanted to, because you thought you had to know. He will suffer because of it. John will slowly fade away, but I'll only let him go when I say so. It's all your fault. Finally, my dad's letter. Michael, I am so sorry for you, my child. He lies to you. He will not keep them safe. He will open it up. He will taint your family with his hands. He lies because he thinks you are gone. He lies because he thinks you deserve more. You don't. None of you do. You are all my children, but you all belong to me. I will take care of you, but I will not take care of him. I will cause him pain. I will keep him alive forever. It's time. Go ahead. Open your letter, Chris. My letter. Chris, I'm so sorry, my child, but the man standing behind you will take you away now. Goodbye.
The man standing behind you will take you away now? I mean, come on. The dad's letter right at the end completely changed the story. They already knew every choice that the OP or Chris was going to make. His dad's letter literally said that Chris would open the box, and by the time Chris reads his own letter, it's already too late. Anyways, that is the end of this 3-hour compilation. I hope you guys enjoyed these stories as much as I did. And yeah, thanks for subscribing to my second channel. And I post every single day on my main channel, and I'm going to post 2 to 3 times a week on this channel. So if you like this type of content, don't forget to subscribe. We're already almost to 1,000, which is crazy. And I will see you guys, I guess, in a couple days. Peace.